Hey, welcome everyone to tonight's hybrid regular meeting of the Livermore City Council, March 11th, April 11th, 2022. And as I just said, this is our initial trial of the new John Shirley Council Chamber, and it's looking forward to it. So we've got a packed agenda, but with that, I'd like to call the meeting to order. And can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Carling,
I'm here.
Councilmember Kick,
Here.
Councilmember Monroe,
Here.
Vice Mayor Bonanno,
Here.
Mayor Warner.
Here.
Thank you.
And now we're going to have the Pledge of Allegiance. I'd like to introduce Troop 393 to present the colors and lead the audience in the Pledge of Allegiance. And Scoutmaster Mark Anderson will introduce the color guard.
Thank you, Your Honor, Council. Audience, appreciate the privilege to be here. Scouting is chartered by the United States Congress. Our mission is to teach leadership skills and character development, and this troop has been doing it for 100 years. In Livermore, corner of 4th and L Street is where the church is. If you want to drop by, have a 100-year celebration with us soon, that's where it all starts. Anyway, I would like to introduce the Scouts of Troop 939. Our captain for the color guard is Andrew Trujillo. Our color guard for the California flag is Lucas Anderson. Thank you. And our color guard for the American flag is Michael Vieira. Your Honor, I'd like to request permission for you to take custody of our travel flag. This flag was first flown on the inaugural event in Pearl Harbor in 2019. As flag travels with us for special events, this is one of them, obviously. Captain, are you having one?
Hello, I'm Andrew Trujillo. I'm here with Troop 939. Color guard attention. Color guard advance. Color guard halt. Audience, please rise. Will veterans and first responders please salute? Audience, please place your right hand over your heart. Color guard advance. Color guard, post the colors. Audience, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Color guard, honor your colors. Color guard reform. Color guard dismissed. Audience may be seated.
Thank you very much. That was really moving for our initial use of this facility. So now I would like to have another ceremony in which we're going to dedicate the land that this building is on. And I want to acknowledge that the city of Livermore sits on the ancestral land of the Ohlone people. And we remember their connection to this region and give thanks for the opportunity to live, work, learn, and pray on their traditional homeland. Let us take a moment of silence to pay respect to their elders and to all Ohlone people of the past and present. Thank you. Next up is 2.1, which is a proclamation declaring April 24 to 30 2022 as the National Crime Victims' Rights Week. And it's going to be presented to Jennifer Mello, South County Victim Advocate Supervisor from the Alameda County Victim Witness Division. So I have the proclamation here, and I'll read some of the highlights, and then it will be presented to her. So whereas the Alameda County District Attorney's Office Victim Witness Assistance Program provides services to aid crime victims' recovery from the emotional, psychological, and social, and economic impact of crime as they regain their sense of safety, well-being, and dignity. And the office works to ensure a criminal justice system's response that is accessible, culturally competent, and appropriate for all victims of crime, without regard to a person's race, gender, religion, nationality, sexual orientation, gender identity, or immigrant status. In 2021, the Alameda County District Attorney's Office Victim Witness Assistance Division provided over 3,315 services to more than 515 crime victims in Livermore, including children, elders, and dependent adults. Whereas in 1981, Congress established National Crime Victims' Right Week as part of an expanding initiative to promote victims' rights and services and to raise awareness of victims' rights. Now, therefore, the City Council of the City of Livermore proclaims April 24 to 30, 2022, to be National Crime Victims' Right Week in Alameda County, and thanks the staff at the Alameda County District Attorney's Office for their service and commitment in advancing the case of justice, the cause of justice for crime victims, and for building a more just community. So the Vice Mayor will present it to Nicole Santos. And if you'd like to say a few words.
On behalf of the Alameda County District Attorney's Office and the Victim Witness Division, we want to thank the City of Livermore for proclamating Victims' Rights Week, April 24th through the 30th. We also want to thank you for recognizing victims and the efforts that we make in order to help the victims. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And the next item is another proclamation declaring April 29, 2022 as Arbor Day in the City of Livermore, and it's presented to Jeff Schaefer, our Assistant Public Works Director. Here's the other proclamation, and I'll go through some of its highlights. Whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees. This holiday, called Arbor Day, is to encourage the planting of trees in appropriate areas of the urban forest and wild, and to encourage appreciation, protection, renewal, and sound management of our forests. In observance of Arbor Day, members of the Livermore Beautification Committee and city staff will visit second grade classes throughout the city April 25, 22 through April 29 to inspire children to plant, nurture, and celebrate trees. In dedication to all 2022 second grade classes within the city, a tree will be planted on April 26, 2022 in Springtown open space. Now, therefore, the City Council of the City of Livermore hereby proclaims April 29, 2022 as Arbor Day in Livermore and urges all residents to observe this day by planting trees where appropriate and/or participating in programs in support of Arbor Day. Now, Vice Mayor will give it to Jeff Schaefer.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you to the City Council for honoring Arbor Day. We'd also like to give special thanks to the Beautification Committee. The Beautification Committee is one of the strong foundations of Arbor Day, and they are the ones that institute the over 1,200 second graders annually for over 20 years that have been part of the Arbor Day celebration. I'd also like to specifically thank the subcommittee of Patty Cole and Ashley Grenay, who have done a tremendous job, especially through COVID, to make sure that this continued and that we could continue to honor the second graders to it. So again, thank you. And the city of Livermore, because of this action and other actions we do, we are one of the top cities in the country, 29 years, Tree City, USA. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next up is item 2.3, our Poet Laureate. We'll have an annual update and poem presented by Cynthia Patton, the City of Livermore Poet Laureate.
Okay, does this one work? Does it need to be closer? Higher? Can you hear me? Okay, terrific. Mayor Warner, city council members, staff, members of the public, it is my honor to update you on my activities as Livermore's 4th Poet Laureate. Now in my 5th and final year, it is amazing to reflect on how much has happened. All things considered, I think this year and the previous years have turned out pretty well. And here's a recap of what's occurred since my last annual report. Poetry in a Test Tube, Livermore's 5th annual science poetry contest, launched in February of 2021, and once again had record submissions. The contest has become surprisingly competitive, but is still tremendously fun. Last year, as we rode out the second surge, it definitely served a community need. The 6th annual contest is currently underway, and I believe we are on track to break submission records once again, particularly in the youth and middle school divisions. Also in February 2021, I hosted a social justice poetry reading as part of Livermore Reads Together. 3 phenomenal poets of color read their work, followed by an incredible Q&A. In March, I hosted a virtual award ceremony and reading for the Science Poetry Contest. In April, I did a reading for National Poetry Month, and in May, I concluded another year of Teen Poet of the Month and participated in a Poets Laureate panel, as well as a slam poetry workshop and a poetry slam, my first ever, for the first ever Las Positas College Literary Arts Festival. I also created a 10-minute video for the city's All-America City Award that features 4 of the poems that I've written as Poet Laureate. Let's see, last summer I intended to relaunch the Whistle Stop Writers open mic in person, but learned that Swirl on the Square, our longtime home, was no longer open on Wednesdays. This triggered a search for a new venue that has continued on and off, unfortunately, until today. In August, I participated in LCAC's community planning workshop representing the literary arts. This led to me being asked to serve on an ad hoc committee that met through the fall and winter to re-envision LCAC's purpose, mission statement, and organizational structure. I wanted to explore how LCAC could better serve individual artists and writers, and I'm happy to say that the results exceeded my expectations. I'm excited to see how LCAC evolves in the future. In September, many of you may be aware, I was awarded a contract with Art Builds Community to offer a series of art and poetry workshops throughout Livermore as a means to collect feedback for the city's cultural arts vision. It created a project called The Hidden Heart. Participants responded to a series of prompts to create a poem about their heart, i.e. themselves. Each line of the poem was written on paper beads that were then decorated and rolled, paper strips that were then rolled into paper beads, hiding the poem inside. Participants used these paper beads along with other beads that were provided to create a meaningful necklace or bracelet. With the help of volunteers, I conducted 6 workshops at Rincon and Civic Center Libraries, Del Val High, Hageman Ranch, the Filipino Barrio Fiesta, and one of the Batch Makers Market. Each workshop felt very healing and even a bit magical. I was sad to see them end. Last summer, Ann Giancola of the Bothwell Center and I began discussing how to do another ekphrastic exhibit. It took us 5 months to pull off, but in January 2022, Double Take, Art and Literature Side by Side, opened at the Bankhead Theater. We literally filled the Bankhead with art paired with poetry, flash fiction, and micro essays. Anne and I hosted 2 receptions where I coordinated a poetry walk with writers reading their work in front of the art that inspired it. I am so proud of that exhibit, and I hope everyone had a chance to see it in person. But if not, we now have, I have a visual, a companion book that preserves the exhibit and all of its creative inspiration. And you can purchase one on Amazon or at the Bankhead when it's open. In February, I prepared an application for an Academy of American Poets Laureate Fellowship. It's a long shot because Livermore's not a big city, but it was my last year, so why not? In March, I partnered with Livermore Library on Livermore Reads Together to celebrate autism and the book, The Reason I Jump. I hosted a prose and poetry reading with fellow autism mothers, interviewed Dr. Temple Grandin, participated in a Q&A with Annette and Matteo Musso, and coordinated an autistic art and poetry exhibit for the library's gallery space. If you didn't see it in March, the exhibit will be displayed again as a pop-up at the Bothwell Art Center before it becomes a traveling exhibit throughout the Bay Area. Let's see, going forward, I already mentioned poetry in a test tube, Livermore Science Poetry Contest. I've extended the deadline for submissions until Tuesday, April 19th. So that's next Tuesday. The award ceremony and reading will take place in person on May 21st at the Civic Center Library at 2 p.m. I'm hoping to do an in-person reading for National Poetry Month at the Bankhead Theater. Teen Poet of the Month continues through May. And that month, I'll also be helping to select the next Poet Laureate and participating in a poetry reading hosted by Patagonia in San Francisco. In June, I'll serve once again as a poetry judge for the Alameda County Fair. I'll be reading at Town Center Books in Pleasanton, along with the Dublin and San Ramon Poets Laureate. And lastly, I'll be doing cowboy poetry once again at Hageman Ranch and helping our new Poet Laureate launch our marquee event, Verse and Vine Poetry in Livermore Wine Country, formerly the Ravenswood Poetry Series, at its new location downtown. It's been an honor to serve as Livermore's Poet Laureate. Thank you for 5 amazing years. I also, this should have been sent to the city clerk if you want to pass that around, but that's another copy of this. At the back of my official report, I've got some bullet points that are, my stats, if you will, but I'm just going to read a couple highlights. Since I was installed as Poet Laureate in 2017, I have written 37 poems for civic events and public art installations. 11 additional pandemic poems created as a part of the Pandemic Poetry Project, which brings the total to 48, and I have a few more to go. I've hosted 66 open mics in person and virtual, and given more than 30 poetry readings in Livermore and throughout the greater Bay Area from 2019 to 2022. So you can read the rest of them on the list. But anyway, it's been a busy 5 years. Okay, so I wrote a new poem for today. This is actually the 3rd poem that I've delivered in this building, ironically. The first one was for the dedication of the building, and then I came back for the city's sesquicentennial, which seems like about 100 years ago. But anyway, I'm really excited to be able to do a 3rd poem now for us when we're actually using this space. So with that as an introduction, this is called When It's Time to Move. Every animal knows when it's time to move, search for territory, shed skin, migrate, split the chrysalis and spread wings. We too must move. We'd outgrown the tired trailer. But as humans, rather than dragonflies, snakes, wolves, whales, or caribou, we move not by chance or instinct. We move with intention. After the past 2 years, there is something to be said for the comfort of sweats, the familiarity of faux wood paneling, the ease of staying put. But we aren't black bears or hermit crabs. We can't hibernate or hide in the safety of shells forever. Eventually spring dawns and it's time to emerge. We need to get a haircut, pull on pants or a skirt, venture into an altered world. Despite a horizon clouded with crises we never imagined, we must change, grow, move. Today, we enter our new home, begin the process of settling in. Everything smells fresh, the finishes unfamiliar. No one knows exactly where to stand or sit. If there were kids here, they'd be running down the hall and peering into cabinets. As with any move, there are darker emotions. You can't find your socks or your toothbrush. You're scared to meet the neighbors or go to school. You miss your old bedroom or the way sunlight fell on the kitchen table while you drank coffee. You long for those left behind. Change can be hard and good, all at the same time. So here we stand in Livermore's family room, a place to share concerns, debate ideas, collectively determine our future. May we work together to create a community that nourishes and inspires us, whatever the future holds. I forgot to ask, does anyone have any questions?
I just want to say thank you for all you've done. It's an incredible amount. It's a great job you're doing. So thank you so much. And yeah, this is the third poem and all of them are beautiful. So thank you.
Anyway, thank you.
I also wanted to say thank you, and thank you for that long list of all that you've done for poetry, in writing it, in spreading the word, in having encouraging people to participate in it. I am not a poet, never will be, but you alone have made, your work has raised my understanding and appreciation of it over the last 5 years. And for that and everything else, I thank you.
And I just wanted to say that poem was very relatable today. I think as public officials, we like to come and put on our professional face, but this is an adjustment for all of us. And I think it's important to acknowledge that we're all entering a new world, and we're going to move on and we're going to change for our community together. So thanks for that kind reminder at the beginning of our inaugural meeting. Appreciate it.
So thanks again. We're on now to Citizens Forum, item 3.0. And could the city clerk explain the process for participating in tonight's meeting, please?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. The City Council's agenda provides opportunities for the public to participate in the meeting by addressing the City Council in the following ways. For non-agendized items, the public has the opportunity during Citizens Forum to address the City Council on any item of interest that is within the City Council's subject matter jurisdiction. For agendized items, the public can address the City Council on each item of business it considers when the mayor opens public comment and should be focused on that particular item. Please note, a speaker is not required to answer any question from the City Council, and the City Council is not required to answer questions from the public. However, the mayor has the discretion to ask staff to address the speaker's comments when a council member believes it is relevant to a particular business item. When participating in tonight's meeting, one comment may be given per person per item. Members of the public can participate in person or remotely as noticed on the agenda. To provide comment in person, please fill out and turn in a speaker card found at the entrance of the council chamber. Speakers will be announced in the order received. We will hear from members of the public who are in person first, followed by those wishing to speak on Zoom. To provide comment by Zoom, please use the raise hand feature or *9 if calling in when the item begins. Please do not wait until the public comment period opens for each item to raise your hand. Instead, raise your hand at the beginning of each item. Once public comment opens, each participant's name will be announced and their 3 minutes will begin once at the lectern or upon being unmuted. The mayor will announce the conclusion of the public comment period after comments have been voiced into the record. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. And also point out that we allow 30 minutes at the beginning of the meeting for citizens forum. And if there's a need for more, then we'll do that at the end of the meeting. So that means that about 8 o'clock, if we need to, we'll cut this off and then continue at the end of the meeting. And the city clerk will announce when there's 5 minutes remaining. And we'll also announce how many speakers will be heard after matters for consideration. So could we have the first speaker, please?
Yes, Mayor. The first speaker is Jim Johnson, followed by Sherry Souza and John Marchand. Jim Johnson.
I'm Sherry Souza. This country will not be a good place for any of us to live unless we make it a good place for all of us to live. Those words by Theodore Roosevelt over 100 years ago never meant more than they do now. Thank you, City Council members and Mayor Warner, for the opportunity to speak to you today. It's good to be seen. In 2016, the City of Livermore considered supporting cannabis businesses in the community with a favorable response from the community, and we would like the city and the City Council to take this under consideration once again. We're here to develop a long-term mutually beneficial relationship with the City of Livermore and support a growing industry. Our proposed dispensary is a startup cannabis company looking to open up in Livermore. We are aware that Alameda County has approved a cannabis establishment near Tesla and Greenville Road, and people are going to flock there from the city to purchase their cannabis. This really only means any local tax revenue is bypassing any financial benefit to the City of Livermore. As longtime Livermore residents, we want to establish a dispensary within the city limits to ensure that this necessary tax revenue helps the city and residents of Livermore both medicinally and financially. By establishing a dispensary here in Livermore, this will give us the opportunity to hire Livermore residents and pay them a good, livable wage with competitive benefits such as paid health care, retirement, and success sharing programs. We also would like to establish a program with our employees to further assist the most vulnerable in our community, as well as giving a portion of our profits back to the community in areas that need it most, such as children that are food insecure or experiencing homelessness. We are a group of dedicated and active community members who are committed to operating a safe and successful cannabis dispensary within the City of Livermore, with a focus on security and compliance to deliver safe products. The health and safety of the City of Livermore is of the utmost importance to us, and we believe the addition of a Livermore dispensary will contribute to that. We understand that the cannabis industry has suffered some hard lessons regarding safety and security in the past, but with that came increased knowledge, security protocols, and methods for mitigating danger and nefarious activity. We're happy to share the numerous security measures that will be used at our dispensary that have proven to be exceptionally effective in this era of smash and grab thefts. In 2019, California required the use of Metric, a statewide seed to sale tracking system, which guarantees the monitoring and the safe use of cannabis. This system is vitally important to deter product from the illicit market and has seen great success. After California deemed adult use cannabis businesses to be essential businesses during the COVID-19 pandemic, California saw a 57% increase in sales in 2020, bringing in over $1 billion in tax revenue in 2020. This is part one of a two-part presentation, and Jim Johnson will complete it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor Warner, City Council, staff, and all the attendees. The illegality of cannabis is outrageous and an impediment to full utilization of a drug which helps produce the serenity and insight, sensitivity, and fellowship so desperately needed in this increasingly mad and dangerous world. Those words from the late scientist and astronomer Carl Sagan have never meant more than they do today. Just a few years ago, those words were certainly never expected, much less in 1971. But in fact, so many residents of Livermore over the age of 50 have already discovered the medical benefits of the regulated medical cannabis industry. The city of Livermore sent out a survey to its citizens and received back responses that were overwhelmingly pro-cannabis. We are listening to what the citizens of Livermore want, and we want the same. That is to provide safe and secure access to safe medical cannabis products for the members of our community. When California legalized cannabis, Livermore banned dispensaries, not wanting the state to make those decisions without city control. Good move. But even though the city of Livermore banned cannabis businesses, the city council at that time was still determined where designated green zones would be within the city. This led us to believe that it would be something the city would consider in the future. And that time is now, we believe. Now, Livermore can create ordinance that ensure products are regulated for consumer safety. There are many examples of neighboring communities who have been operating dispensaries effectively in the Bay Area, and the city of Livermore can reference other local ordinances that have been very successful. Our team hired seasoned industry consultants to offer support and data to help draft ordinances that benefit the city as well as the residents. These guidelines come from 6 years of implementation across the state and can protect the city from litigation regarding the choices made for ordinances and permitting. Livermore can benefit in many ways. With the COVID-19 pandemic, tax revenue has taken a huge dip, of course. Creating ordinances within Livermore that include an additional city tax on all cannabis could really help generate the much needed tax revenue for the city, as well as opportunity for job creation. Currently, our model estimates potential for considerable local revenue. So why now? Livermore has had 4 years to understand the mistakes and successes of other municipalities and has the ability to form excellent regulations that work for our residents. We are longtime Livermore residents. We are self-funded. We are experienced in business and specifically several recent years of operating a successful dispensary. We are able to develop and manage this business and want to contribute to the community needs that will be beneficial to all. We ask the City Council to pass our request to staff for review and consideration, and we are available at any time to answer questions or concerns staff may derive from our presentation. Thank you so very much.
The next speaker is John Marchand, followed by Carrie Olds and David McGuigan. John Marchand.
Good evening, Mayor Werner, Vice Mayor Bonanno, members of the council. Tonight, all of us are part of history, a history that was over 30 years in the making. This is the first city council meeting to be held in the council chamber that was dedicated in the name of town veterinarian, planning commissioner, community servant and advocate, councilman, statesman, former mayor, and war hero, Dr. John Shirley. The triple wide trailer that served for over 30 years as the temporary council chamber was first opened in 1987. Towards the end, it was drafty, the roof leaked, it was flea infested, and occasionally it was inhabited by raccoons. A visiting dignitary once asked me, "Do you hold your meetings here as a means to discourage public participation?" The first community gathering held in this building was on July 13th, 2019, and Dr. Shirley was here with his family to dedicate this council chamber in his name. The suggestion to name the chamber came from two of John's friends from Rotary, Dr. Marty Plone and Dr. Bruce Shore. Sadly, none of them are still here with us tonight to celebrate. The second gathering in this building was on November 2nd, 2019, to celebrate the 150th anniversary of the founding of Livermore
and to dedicate the William Mendenhall Community Room, which has already served as our Emergency Operations Center. It is fitting that the EOC, which will protect our community for generations, is named after the man who founded Livermore in 1869. Even when this building was completed, there was a global pandemic that kept us out. Tonight, once again, our community comes together to work together on the business of city governance. It is here that the council will communicate their vision for our city and listen to the residents. This is where anyone can feel welcome and will be encouraged to speak about matters which are important to them with their elected representatives. A lot was accomplished in that triple wide trailer. I look forward to many great things being accomplished here. Thank you.
Next speaker is Carrie Olds, followed by David McGuigan and Jackie Coda. Carrie Olds.
Good evening. My name is Carrie Olds. I'm the program manager for the Meals on Wheels program with Spectrum Community Services. We serve 275 homebound seniors here in the Tri-Valley. What I wanted to talk tonight about is that we just celebrated 50 years in March. March was March for Meals. It was the 50th anniversary of the institution of the Meals on Wheels program. I had the pleasure of having Councilmember Monroe come out and do a ride along. And not only did she come and do a ride along, she did it with one of my best Friday volunteers, Vice Mayor Bonanno. And we can't do these things by serving without having everyone do their part. And it's such a nice thing to have the Vice Mayor as one of my volunteers. So she came out and did that. So that's what we did in March. What I want to talk about also is we still need volunteers. It takes us 90 volunteers a week to serve the 275 seniors that we're serving. So if you're interested in volunteering, please reach out to me at mow@spectrumcs.org. You can reach us there. We're happy to get you cleared. If you have not been out and would like to do a ride along, you can also send a message there and you will reach me and I will schedule a ride along. The last thing I want to speak to is that we continue to do fundraising and we have an amazing night set up on May 7th. It will be a wine tasting at a private residence here in Livermore, so seating is limited. If you are interested in a ticket, please go to our website at spectrumcs.org. Thank you, and thank you all for what you do. And it's a beautiful building, and I'm happy to be here tonight. Thank you.
The next speaker is David McGuigan, followed by Jackie Coda and Doug Mann.
Just a second.
Can I
Vice
just
Mayor
make a-
Bonanno wants to say something.
Thank you, Mayor. Just real quick comment that I just think this Meals on Wheels program is such an amazing program. Carrie Olds, who you just heard from, and Krista Olson, her able assistant, are just amazing people. They do amazing work in the community, and it's an incredible honor to be able to participate with their program. And I encourage everybody to one way or another support their program because it's such good work and it's so important to members of our community that sometimes don't have food and can't get out to even get it. So it's just a tremendous program. Thank you.
Councilmember Monroe.
I wanted to just say thank you for the shout out. It was one morning. I really appreciated seeing the expertise of the Vice Mayor and all the work you do. Volunteering is a good thing. It's on my list. We'll see what happens. Thank you so much. 90 volunteers a week, huh? It's a lot. It's a lot. Thank you.
Okay, next speaker, please.
Mayor, City Council. My disappointment with Mr. Alcala's response is well known, but there were a couple of items that I did find quite interesting. The investigator did indeed finish his report in May of 2019, and the city attorney was responsible for producing the final response. Now let's go back to May 2019, when the investigator turns over the report to the city attorney and he just files it. For some reason, the normally conscientious Mr. Alcala completely biffs his responsibility to produce the legally mandated final response. This doesn't sound like Mr. Alcala, does it? Now let's go to November 2020, when I learned of Chief Harris's early retirement and the appointment of Chief Young. At this time, my right to due process had already been denied for a year and a half. This is when I wrote a letter that you already have to Chief Young expressing my dismay that it had been 21 months and I was still no response. Now, if there had been some kind of honest mistake in not producing their final report, well, this would have been a good time to do it. And yet my right to due process was denied for over another year until I wrote to the council. My right to due process was denied for over 2.5 years. This needs to be explained because right now it looks like your city attorney and your chief of police has engaged in a criminal conspiracy to deny me due process. If this is true, I would like to press charges. The only real question remaining is whether you, Mayor, are criminally complicit or just clueless to what your staff is doing behind your back. I'm leaning toward criminal, but I can't be convinced you're just stupid. While you consider the really good look you've got going on right now, Mayor, remember that the people of Livermore know that police chiefs don't retire early over nothing. And if you wanted your lie to be believed, you really shouldn't have deliberately withheld it for over 2.5 years first. Thank you.
The next speaker is Jackie Cota, followed by Doug Mann and Michael Ferrucci.
Good evening. It's nice to see you in person. Thank you for opening it up. It's a long time coming. I've come here tonight to let you know that we've been doing a lot of community outreach with regard to the downtown affordable housing. And guess what? Every time we tell people that it's not the legacy building that's going up, that it's actually going to be another monstrosity across the street that's going to loom over the Blacksmith Square, as quoted by Mayor Marchand, former Mayor Marchand, they're quite disappointed because we all know that we did community outreach and we all know what everybody wanted. Everybody wanted what? To maintain the ambiance of the downtown, open space and parking. We didn't get that. In fact, people tried to move a hotel over there and we fought that because we wanted open space. And guess what? We got the hotel where we wanted to, most of us, right? But now guess what? That there was a bait and switch that was done. And the community members think that what's already being built over there is the affordable housing. When they're told it's not, they're quite disappointed because people have moved here for the ambiance of the downtown. You have the ability to move it. When we tell them that we've suggested across from Heritage Estates, a piece of property that the city owns outright, that's close to schools, shopping, and fuel and transportation, they can't understand why it is that our city council and former Mayor Marchand wants to destroy the downtown. In fact, we have him on video saying exactly that. The people want the ambiance, the people want open space, and they want parking. And then when he talks about affordable housing, guess what? He used to call it workforce housing. That's how he sold the bag of goods to the people in the community. He said that law enforcement and teachers were going to be able to live there. Well, guess what? They make too much money. So that was a bag of goods that was sold. And now Mayor Marchand, who termed out, is going to try and run again to come back and destroy our city some more. We're not going to have that. We're actually informing people of the realities and the truth of what's going on downtown. And every single person that we talk to in all of the outreach that we've done, downtown farmers markets, going to different clubs and talking to our neighborhood outreaches, they don't want it. They tell us we moved here to get away from high density housing. We moved here because of the quaint downtown. When we talk about how the farmers markets could be moved to that area and that could be a big open space and utilize the science center and what was it again? The education center and cultural center. That's what they want. So when it comes time to voting and elections, we want to make sure that people know that change in Livermore is needed. And we don't want to go backwards. We want to move forward with some change. Thank you.
The next speaker is Doug Mann, followed by Michael Ferrucci and Carl Wente.
Nice place you got here. I'd like to thank the City Council for following up on my February 28th suggestion to send a letter to Snezhinsk, letting them know how we feel about Russia's invasion of Ukraine. I really shouldn't take much credit for it. I'm sure as soon as I said it, it occurred to all of you that that's exactly the kind of thing that our City Council should do, and I'm glad you did it. I would just add that I think it'd be even better if it were a daily newsletter. They don't get news. And coming from us here, I think might have some weight. And it doesn't need to be the mayor every time. You could assign it to a staff person to take care of. I just think that'd be a nice thing to do. The other item I brought up that day has not yet been on an agenda. I'm talking about bringing the community together to discuss the Valley Link train. It's not a BART train, and residents have never been asked whether or not they even want it. It's just something that came about agency to agency, and none of us voted on it. I think it's very likely that people's imagination of what commuting life will be like after Valley Link is in operation might be quite different than the reality. Community awareness is lacking. So let me just touch on a couple of points. First, you do realize that the train cannot operate until 2032 at the earliest, because that's as soon as BART can get their interval from 15 minutes down to 12. Otherwise, the new commuters created by the new train will not be able to get on BART. Meanwhile, our sales tax dollars that are supposed to be paying for it are being held and not working to fix our roads and sidewalks. Amending AB 758 could return those funds to the city council for spending on Livermore's transportation needs right now. Second, a resident at that meeting unknowingly reinforced my point about misunderstandings when he talked about how much he likes trains and that he doesn't like the congestion on 580. Okay, well, ironically, what he doesn't understand is that based on where he lives, he will get on BART faster if he drives to Pleasanton. Adding another train to his transportation plan would cost him time, but he didn't know it. I think there's a very real possibility that Valley Link will cause more congestion in the form of overpacked BART trains rather than reducing it, as everybody wishes a new commuter train would do. I may be wrong. Let's have a real debate about it. Residents need to be asked an important question, and they need their answer heard. Would you rather build a train from Stockton to Dublin, or would you rather fix our roads, sidewalks, and expand bus services? We have a community asset management program that is $30 million a year underfunded. And that sales tax money that we're paying is being held and not spent. Maybe our residents want to do something else with it, and state legislation is the way to handle that. Thank you.
The next speaker is Michael Ferrucci, followed by Carl Wente.
Good evening, City Council, Mayor, staff, and all the people that I recognize in this room. It is just a thrill to be here. I'm pleased to join all of you, as well as the citizens watching at home. I'm certain that many of us would have liked to have John Shirley here for the first council meeting in this room dedicated in his name. I'd known John for over 40 years, and he was a good friend, consummate Rotarian, a leader, a mentor, and I believe he lived his life by adhering to a simple four-way test that's very familiar to the Rotarians in the room and at home. A test that he believed applied to everything he does, everything he says, everything he thinks. The other thing about John is, I will go over the test, but when I first met John, the man listened intently to everything that people say to him, and he remembers just about everything you say to him. Coincidentally, he went to the same high school as my wife, but in different years. I just thought I'd mention that, Newport Harbor High. And this morning I was taking a walk looking for just a way to get away from my office. And I met Bob Retzlaff. And Bob Retzlaff, the owner of the winery, we talked for about 15, 20 minutes, and he was concerned about the division that's going on in our city. And we talked about previous administrations and the current administration downtown, you name it, all the issues. And it's not easy to follow the four-way test, which is adopted by Rotary decades ago. But it's simply, is it the truth? When you, everything you do, say, and think, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build good will and better relationships, friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? That's what I want you to do. That's what I want everyone to do that has the ability and the authority to create change, is to take that test and make sure that what you do results in that that answer, or the answer to those 4 questions. I wanted, there's so many different things to think about right now, but I wanted to say and recognize and congratulate Joe Tessa for becoming the new fire chief, because I met Joe in Rwanda, climbing a mountain looking for gorillas. He came from Livermore and I came from Livermore. We did not know each other before that. It's a small world. It's not easy to tell the truth. All you have to do is admit facts. You hear life isn't fair, but you can build relationships by listening. You will be beneficial to all concerned. I want to thank you for tolerating, me, and I want to thank you for the respect that I get from everyone in here. I've lived in Livermore for 40 years, and I appreciate this community. Thank you.
Next speaker is Carl Wente.
Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council, thank you all for what you do to serve. Thank you for the great words that have come from the folks that are here. Those that put on a bulletproof vest, got a badge on to serve. We salute you. Thank you for that public safety. Staff here in Livermore, what you do, the responsiveness, the openness, like you communicate, you collaborate, you'll sit down and we'll listen and go through. And I can't help but think how thankful it is. You can please some people sometime, can't please all the people all the time. And really, what is good government, right? That's sort of what got me started in this: government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And I want to first, I'll say thank you to Cynthia Patton and just what you do for the arts, for the community, for the use of verbal language and teaching our community and getting them out there. And, as a human species, we are uniquely intentional in comparison to every other species out there. So may we set the good intention to be truthful, to be fair, that serves goodwill, to serve for better relationships and friendships, beneficial to all. That one is tough, right? Because you can please some people sometime, can't please all the people all the time. But that keen focus on the greater good, God, and ain't that one hell of a thing to define at the end of the day, but we know when it's true, and about the community and about the diversity of our community with intention. So we can change, so we can grow, so we can move, so we can work together for community. Thank you, Cynthia. I also thought it was quite ironic that she's like, hey, we're gumming out of our shells here in time for a haircut. And just 2 days ago, my wife said, you've been cutting your own hair for 2 years. I think it's time for a professional. And alas, it probably is. But may we continue to listen, right? Because, to say you're criminal, to say you're stupid, like that doesn't feel right. Bait and switch. No, like we bore witness. Those that bore witness to the process, let's talk about that factual history. Right? That bore witness to it all the way through, right? It's not perfect as we go to come in and throw out that y'all ain't ethical, y'all don't care about community. Like that's blasphemy in terms of how well y'all serve and what you do. So I just, again, thank you. But may we have an open community that celebrates the dialogue and celebrates the discourse. May we lean in and think about what of the people, by the people, for the people means. We can get involved with an airport commission, a beautification commission, a climate action plan, a community asset management program, commission for the arts. Hell yeah. General plan update. What a huge part of our community right now that every 20 years is mandated by the California Constitution. We do an update for our general plan, the Constitution of the City of Livermore. Get involved, lean in, come and speak. Historic preservation, human services, library, board of trustees, housing authority, planning commission. I mean, there's so many ways that we can lean in and get involved. Be kind to each other as we are all of this community. Namaste. I salute y'all, city staff, those with the badge.
The next request to speak will be over Zoom.
The first speaker is Michelle, followed by Marnie Steele, followed by Connie Huang. Michelle, please unmute yourself.
Hello, my name is Michelle Mitchell, and good evening, Mayor and Council. I would like to request the city work with the parcel owner of the Garaventa Hill to purchase the land using Altamont landfill funds and/or Doherty Valley funds and rezone the land to open space. I've submitted an outline of my request to be included in tonight's agenda packet. My time is very short with you tonight. I just want to thank you for your time and consideration regarding this environmentally important parcel of land. Thank you.
Sorry, new skill. Marnie Steele, please unmute yourself.
Hello, am I unmuted?
We can hear you.
Thank you. Hello, Mayor Warner, and hello. Oh, there goes my speech. Just one second. There we go. Vice Mayor Bonanno and council members. My name is Marnie Steele, and I reside at 1996 Meadow Glen Drive. Thank you for this opportunity to share my thoughts and for all the time that each of you spend doing your important government role. I certainly understand that it takes a significant amount of your day, every week to run this city. I'm commenting today on the fact that the no project alternative option was not properly disclosed as an option when the proposed Garaventa Hill development project by Lafferty Homes was being presented, reviewed, and opposed a few years ago. As a member of the Save the Hill group that worked to oppose that project, we poured through that EIR and the RFEIR, looking for how it could be justified to develop this land. All of the environmentally sensitive areas that clearly showed negative environmental impact were quickly closed off and labeled as non-significant. And all of those same problematic areas were said to be mitigated with some other land area being preserved. This was all very unclear as a member of the community, and we now know that the mitigation plan was not adequate and largely incomplete. We also know that mitigation is not always the answer. Some environmental issues need to stand alone and be recognized and not mitigated away. Never once was it stated that the option existed for a no project alternative. Of course, Livermore needs housing, but the council has the obligation to disclose all of the options for any project. The citizens of Livermore had to fund the lawsuit that eventually led to the overturn of the Lafferty project being approved. It should not have gone that far. We have learned since that there are conservation funds available that could have been utilized. The Save the Hill group tried to understand how those funds could be used, but could get no clear answers from the various committees that we spoke with over the years. Apparently, the landowners did know about these funds, according to an article that I read in the Independent newspaper dated April 7th. However, we, the public, rely on our government to ensure all the facts of the matter are disclosed. Please consider the proposed Garaventa Hills development project by Lafferty Homes as a learning experience. There are environmentally sensitive areas that cannot be mitigated away. Thank you for your time and attention to this important topic.
Okay, I'd like to point out that this item is actually on the agenda. And you should, for the Garaventa Hills, we should be talking about that in advance of our closed session. So I also see it's 8 o'clock when we said we would cut off the time. So and I see though, there are 2 more speakers on Zoom that would like to address us. If they would like to do so not about Garaventa Hills, please do so. Otherwise, let's stick to Citizens Forum is for non-agendized items.
The next speaker is, okay, she lowered her hand. The next speaker is James Linhart, followed by Thomas Keller. James Linhart, please unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
So my name is James Linhart. I live at 2519 Almanor Court here in Livermore. Was a member of your fire department for 30 years and spent the last 9 years as a manager, specifically a division chief. And I was distressed to hear that the Livermore Pleasanton Fire Department is at impasse in their negotiations or near impasse. And the reason I'm calling in is because I want to make sure that you understand who you've been getting your information from. The city of Pleasanton has been given the lion's share of management responsibilities for this department recently. And the thing that I witnessed as an employee, a management employee of the city or for the Livermore Pleasanton Fire Department was a general unfriendly attitude toward the fire department. And even in public comments, referred to them as a necessary evil, which again is distressing to me because I understand how hard these people work and how they put their safety on the line on a daily basis for the community. And to have a city manager for the city of Pleasanton refer to them that way is just totally inappropriate. The attitude that I saw whenever there was some type of an employee issue was, we as the city will do what we want and you'll have to come and arbitrate or sue us if you don't like it. Ironically, in most every case, the employee prevailed. So in addition to poor decision-making by the upper management in Pleasanton, they've also damaged the morale of the employees and in some cases, the morale of city council members for both cities. And I can give you two examples. I won't be specific because they're regarding lawsuits or potential lawsuits. But in both cases, neither city council was kept informed of one lawsuit that had been settled in the employee's favor for a large sum of money because of inappropriate action by the city of Pleasanton. And they did not tell them about that, and they were all quite upset. And the other one, it wasn't until the former mayor of Livermore was informed of the situation and he intervened did the situation get satisfactorily resolved. I'd just like you, in closing, to consider the information that you get from the city manager or his office in the city of Pleasanton when you're discussing negotiations with the Livermore Pleasanton Fire Department. Thank you very much.
The next speaker, did I do that right? Yeah. The next speaker is Thomas Keller, followed by Tony Camp. Thomas Keller, please unmute yourself.
And I'd like to point out that we won't, these people already had signed up, but anybody else coming in, we can do so towards the end of the meeting because we've gone past our limit here.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Thomas Keller. I live at 540 South Q Street here in Livermore. Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Council, thank you for your time. I just had an opportunity this weekend to meet and discuss some of the issues that are happening with the Livermore Pleasanton Fire Department. Basically working without a contract, showing up in good faith to do their job and not being honored by the cities that they represent. So, I mean, I find that concerning as somebody that grew up here, lives here, works here. And from their conversations with me, some of the things I understand is that there's an issue with having paramedics not gaining rank through the city, not being paid to upgrade and maintain the paramedics' licenses that they have to go through every year. And one of the other concerns for me personally was that in the language of the contracts previously, nothing was stated regarding substance abuse and how to handle employees, firefighters, police and such, that these first responders, they do things that none of us want to do. So the things that they see and do. So when an issue of substance abuse comes up with an employee, there's nothing in there that protects them or helps them get the services they need to recover. So these are just some of the things that I understand. I just wanted to bring them up tonight, but I do believe that what this city goes through and what they need is firefighters with a contract. So thank you very much.
The final speaker is Tony Camp. Tony Camp, please unmute yourself.
Yes, good evening. Public service is an honor and a privilege. And I think it's quite obvious that so many of our public servants are should be recognized and should be dealt with on a straightforward basis. And it does appear that I am also referring to the existing contract negotiations with the for your local labor dispute with the firefighters. And it just seems to me that to threaten firefighters with withholding their increase in salary, which most other departments have negotiated and are receiving, to hold that over the heads of firemen during a negotiation and telling them that they're never going to get that retroactive pay, even if they sign this agreement. There are 5 issues, as I understand it, and all of them are very important and are being negotiated in good faith. But there seems to be some question as to whether the council at Livermore is aware of these negotiations in their depth and aware of the issues that have been in question. So I just urge you to please look into them, to honor the police and particularly the firemen in this circumstance, but in all of your negotiations with public service personnel that risk their lives for the public, including myself, and give them the fair opportunity that they deserve. Thank you.
There are no more requests to speak, Mayor.
So you said that concludes our speakers?
Yes, there are no more requests.
Okay, I'll close the, doesn't sound like this microphone is on. Or can you hear me? Can you hear me? The button says it's on.
Give us just a moment to adjust your mic level up there.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay. I will close the citizens forum. We're now on to the consent calendar 4.0. Now, the consent calendar items are considered routine in nature and are acted upon by the city council with a single action. Members of the audience wishing to provide public input must submit a speaker card or use the raised hand feature in Zoom during the public comment period to comment on any of the consent calendar items. Is there any member of the council that would like to pull any items for discussion? Or no, okay. So I'll go to public comment at this point. Does anybody wish to address us on any item of the consent calendar?
Yes, Mayor, there's one request to speak. Jackie Coda.
I think she's not here. So, okay, anybody else want to speak to us?
There are no other requests to speak.
Okay, so no one here present wants to speak to us. I'll close the public comment on the consent calendar and bring it back to the council. Does anybody on the council wish to mention any item? Okay, Councilmember Monroe.
So this is one of those council, okay, can you hear me? Oh, good, okay. This is one of those consent calendars where there's a lot of stuff that really shows the work that the city does. And I wanted to just mention a couple of items that are fairly exciting. Some of them are regional in nature. Some of them are specific to Livermore. One is items 4.3 or 2 are items 4.3 and 4.4. These are funding from Alameda County Transportation Commission for road crossing improvements at Cannabis at Robertson Park Boulevard. And then there's also Alameda County Transportation Commission for Lawrence Elementary School Safe Routes to School. I know this is an area that we've talked about a lot. And there's a supplemental grants for crossword safety improvements in 2022. I also wanted to mention item 4.5, there's an ESL grant to the library. And then item 4.7, a block by block, which provides cleanup and help for the homeless in our community. All of these are ways, these are essential services in so many different ways. And then Mayor, I was going to let you do the last item on there, but if you aren't going to, I'm going to. All right, well, the last item on there is item, hang on a minute, it's coming up. It's the fact that we're moving out of the emergency declaration after a couple of years. And I just thought that was worth calling out. So it's a big consent calendar. And if it's all right, I'm going to go ahead and move the consent calendar.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any further comment? Seeing none, can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Carling,
Aye.
Councilmember Kick,
Aye.
Councilmember Monroe,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Bonanno,
Aye.
Mayor Werner.
Yes, passes unanimously. We're on to item 5.1. And this is a hearing to consider proposed Livermore municipal water rates and charges for calendar years 2023 through 2027. And just to bear with us, this is going to be a particular procedure we're going to go through. And I'd like to welcome the City of Livermore public hearing. Oh, yeah, welcome everyone to the City of Livermore public hearing on the proposed adjustments to water rates. And before we open the public hearing, I would like to ask our city attorney to explain the Proposition 218 requirements for this public hearing and the proposed adoption of the water rates.
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name is Jason Alcala and I'm your city attorney. The public hearing this evening was set to comply with Proposition 218. To do that, the city mailed notice of the public hearing to the record owners for the parcels and for the property tenants who are subject to the proposed water rates. The purpose of the public hearing is for the city council to hear all oral testimony and consider all written protests concerning the proposed water rates. Protests must be in writing, that is, not an email, not an electronic format, and must include specific information about the person and the property protesting the particular water rate. This information is required to verify an individual's eligibility for the protest and the property the protest is submitted for. Now, if the written protests against the proposed water rate are submitted by a majority of the affected owners and tenants, that means the city council may not impose the proposed water rates. Now, for this proceeding this evening, staff has determined that the city would need to receive 4,741 written protests for a majority protest to exist. Absent a majority protest, the city council may impose the proposed water rates pursuant to state law with regard to Prop 218. In determining whether a majority protest exists, only one written protest per parcel may be counted. With that, Mr. Mayor, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, thank you. The public hearing will be conducted in the following manner. One, a city staff and the rate consultant will first provide a presentation of the proposed water rates. After the presentation, I'll open the public hearing for any person wishing to speak on the item. Third, after all oral testimony has been heard, I'll call for a short recess to determine if a majority protest to the proposed water rates has been received. Only those written protests submitted prior to the close of the public hearing will be counted. 4, if you wish to speak on this item and you are attending this meeting in person, please submit a speaker card to the city clerk. They will read your name from the speaker slip and ask that you come forward to speak from the podium. To submit a comment using Zoom, you may use the raised hand feature as soon as the item begins. You'll be given a maximum of 3 minutes to speak. We ask that you keep your comments brief and to the point so that we can allow everyone a chance to speak. Our city clerk will be keeping time for each speaker. You'll be notified when you have reached your maximum allowed time. If you wish to yield your time to another speaker or have a group presentation, you may do so, but the person speaking on your behalf or the group as a whole will be given a maximum of 6 minutes to ensure that everyone has an opportunity to speak today. If a previous speaker has already addressed the items you are going to speak on, you are not required to state them as well and have the opportunity to waive your right to speak. To facilitate the discussion, any questions from the speakers will not be answered during the public hearing. A discussion of the proposed water rates by the City Council will take place after the close of the public hearing and prior to any action being taken. The staff will now provide a brief presentation on the rates, then we'll open the public hearing.
Honorable Mayor, this is Mark Roberts, and I'm going to introduce Anthony Smith, our Management Analyst 2, who's going to begin leading us through this item. Anthony?
Thank you, Mark. Good evening, Mayor and Council members. My name is Anthony Smith, Management Analyst in the Public Works Department. The City Council last adjusted water rates for the Livermore Municipal Water Utility in 2017. Proposition 218 allows for rates to be adjusted in advance up to 5 years at a time. And so now the time has come to revisit the city's water rates. To this end, the city has retained the services of IB Consulting to perform a water rate and cost of service study. Tonight, the city's consultant, Habib Isaac, will present on the methodology and results of this cost of service study. Mr. Isaac will be joining us remotely this evening via Zoom. And with that, I'll go ahead and hand it over to Mr. Isaac.
Thank you so much, Anthony. Good evening, Habib Isaac with IB Consulting. Just because we're using technology, I want to make sure that you can hear me okay.
Yes, Habib.
Thank you so much. So this is going to be a fairly brief presentation because I don't want to hold up public testimony for this evening. I'm going to summarize our findings and our report. We provided the city with the comprehensive water cost of service study that updates the rates. And part of those main objectives of this study was, first, the city was at the end of its 5 years, so now you have to look at the next 5 years. We developed a financial plan model to identify any updates in trends, water usage between tiers, customer classes, as well as meter counts. And then we've developed a long-term financial plan to determine how much revenue the city receives in water and what is needed for covering the future revenue requirements. Once we know that, then we allocate those costs to the customers and proportionately to comply with Prop 218. And then I mentioned you have comprehensive reports to be part of your administrative record. Now, when we're talking about any type of utility study, there's more than just figuring out what the rate should be. With long-term financial planning, we think about your operating costs, and operating expenses don't inflate at the same rate, whether it be energy or staffing. So we make sure that we identify each line item and then determine what's the appropriate projections for that particular expense. And then water usage has continued to change. And last time we were just coming out of drought. Now we're coming out of COVID and potentially some additional drought precautions. So we have to make sure that our usage baseline is correct for projections. And then within the utility, one of the biggest components that you don't actually see is the capital system reinvestment. That's one of the major components of any utility rate study. And we want to make sure that those are addressed, as well as continue to maintain your reserves. And with reserves, there's certain best management practices of how much you should have for operating, how much you should have to secure your capital spending. And then we updated those as well. And then lastly, we then identify your projections for usage and then what's the amount of revenue that be generated. So the first thing we want to do is look at how you're sitting today. And from the last previous study, which I worked on, one of the main things that I just finished was your asset management plan, and we wanted to fold that in. And what we want to make sure with financial metrics, this is the first one, is your operating position. So this does not include capital. This does not include any rate reserve funding. What this graph shows is that you want to make sure you generate positive annual net income above your operating expense that then goes towards your capital spending and your reserve funding. What this graph is showing is the black trend line going across is the amount of revenue your existing rates generate today. And there's no more rate adjustment. So that's why you see it flat across the board. And then the dash red trend line is your expenses based on inflationary adjustments. Slowly is increasing over time. And then the bars at the bottom is the difference between your revenue and expenses, which is your net surplus in revenue. And then you'll notice that that is slowly declining if we don't adjust rates. Continue on. And then the other side of the coin is you meet your operating, but then capital is one of your biggest expenses. And what you see here is your annual capital expenses for reinvestment in your system ranges from $3 million up to $4 million on an annual basis. So this is pretty much the main driver that we want to make sure that you fully fund. And so you continue to provide safe, reliable water, while at the same time, we want to maintain a healthy reserve balance. Go ahead. This last slide now shows your reserves, where they are today and where they're trending. So on the last time we did the study, we knew your asset management plan was developed, and we wanted to have sufficient funding for that. So we anticipated that reserves were going to build up. And then now we're at the point where now reserves could be utilized as part of funding your capital. So you have a very small amount of positive net income, and then your capital, your reserves would be used to fund your capital expenses. However, when we look, we don't just look at the next 5 years, we look over 10 years. So we set you up for success, and we look outside of the planning period to make sure that there's none of unforeseen costs or capital that we have to address. So the one thing we want to make sure we do is that we maintain the minimum requirement, which is the red trend line of where you should be throughout this planning period of 10 years. So from the results of our review, we want to continue to maintain positive net income in future years, but we want to tick that up a little bit. So then as we use the reserves, we also are leveling off where it doesn't continue to deplete. Capital is the primary driver for this analysis. Additional revenue is needed to continue that replacement program while maintaining healthy reserves. And as we look through this, we also accounted for the fact that we want to do a smooth transition, that for this next fiscal year, starting July 1st, we anticipate no revenue adjustment, no increase in revenue. So it's going to be status quo. However, when we do a full cost of service update and update the usage trends of different customer classes, there's always going to be a little bit of recalibration of rates. So even with no revenue adjustments, there could be increase or decrease in one customer specific bill. So that may happen just from shifting of costs. And then following 2023, from 24 to 27, we are recommending just modest adjustments of 1% revenue increase each year. Go ahead. So with the proposed financial plan, now this is with no increase in 2023, but with 1% increases over the next 4 years, you'll see that now your revenue, which is the black trend line, increases very slightly, and now it continues to exceed your operating expense, and you generate positive net income every single year around $2.5 million. Go ahead. We still have the same capital spending, and then at the end result, now you'll see that we still are depleting of the reserves, bringing it back down because that's what we anticipated. But with the 1% revenue adjustments, we then smooth it out where the reserves don't go below your minimum. We stay within that bandwidth of your minimum and your ideal target. Now that we know the long-term financial plan, this slide just shows what are the total revenue requirements that need to come from rates. I don't expect you to look at every single line item, but we focus on 2023. Your purchase water cost is 10.2 million. Your operating expenses are 6.5. And then there's some adjustments for reserve funding. So total amount of revenue that needs to come from rates is $8.56 million. And that for this is the rate year because we're going into 2023, but this assumes no increase in revenue from 2022. Go ahead. So, and then one thing with rate design, we also want to identify if there's going to be any adjustments to how revenue is covered from rates. So with the single family residential customer class, we're maintaining the same rate structure, 2 tiers, but we're just updating and recalibrating the rates. For multifamily, we're actually going to move away from 2 tiers and go to a uniform rate. The reason being because when you actually do 2 tiers for multifamily, you need to account for the number of dwelling units within each complex and the number of units that is served by accounts that have by multiple meters. So this eliminates the need for the city to track dwelling units and how many dwelling units are served by each specific meter. But keep in mind, even though we're not using tiers, multifamily is still paying their proportionate share of costs. So they're going to be allocated $2 million. Whether we tier the rates or don't, they're still going to recover $2 million. And then also, we want to ensure revenue stability with the city, and we're maintaining the fixed recovery at 45%. That's what your current rates recover now. The monthly fixed charge recovers 45% of the total revenue needed, and we're continuing to maintain that to make sure you cover your outside expenses and your debt payments. And then we're going to continue to use the pass-through provisions that's in the water code, where if you incur any costs from other agencies, such as Zone 7, then you could use a pass-through provision where if they increase their rates, then you're allowed to just pass it through to your customers because you don't know what the elected body is going to do. Granted, they do notice you, and then when they notice you, you're able to adjust without having to go through this entire process. Go ahead. Now that we showed the rate structure, this now shows you the components that go into the fixed charge and the components go into variable charge. On the left-hand side is the makeup of your fixed component. We have your Zone 7 fixed. So Zone 7 charges fixed charges, and they charge commodity rates based on how much water you purchase from them. Account services, that's where it's customer service, staffing, basically your base level cost to have an account. So it's your base fee. And then the next component is your meter capacity. Some costs, it makes more sense to spread based on the size of the meter, such as capital costs, because that's a more fair allocation, where the meter size is a reflection of the demand it puts, the customer puts on the system. So that's the other component that's fixed. And then lastly, your system is built for fire flow capacity. And then there's a small component that makes up the fixed charge for fire flow demand. On the variable side, we have the Zone 7 purchase water. We have the cost to get the water from the Zone 7 to end users taps, which is your delivery charge or for your conveyance system. Then we have peaking costs where each customer doesn't use water in the same manner. There's customers that peak really high, irrigation, even single family. Then we have commercial customers that have a different use of the way they use water. So peaking takes into account that different usage trends of your customers. And then lastly, you also have a recycle system, and recycle customers get charged the same fixed charge, but they have their own component that we allocated those expenses and assign it directly to recycle customers. So with that allocation, we stay with the 45% fixed and the 55% variable. When we look at the dollar amounts associated with the city service charges, so this does not include Zone 7, you'll see that the account services, should be the same charge across the board, no matter what size meter you have or the type of customer you are. And then the other two components, the meter capacity and fire flow, that is a function of the size of your meter, where the capacity ratio is taken into account. So those capacity ratios, that is the third column over from the left, is the amount of flow that could be generated by the different size meters. So it's essentially the safe yield in gallons per minute. As an example, the 3/4 inch meter has the ability to have a flow of 3 gallons per minute, 30 gallons per minute, whereas the 5/8 is 20 gallons per minute. So therefore, the ratio for 3/4 in relation to 5/8 is 1.5, which is 30 divided by 20. And then that same approach is taken for all the size meters. And then the cost that is assigned to the 5/8 for meter capacity and fire flow is then increased by the meter capacities for the different size meters. That again then gives you the end result, the city service charges, that is in bold on the far right. We also show your existing rates of today. And then you see there are a little bit of shifting going on, but that's just from recalibrating the rates because we have different configuration of number of accounts by size and different total accounts. And then with that, with the 1% increases from 24 to 27, you'll then see very, very slight adjustments, less than 50 cents every single year. So this shows that what you did previously is now generating benefits ongoing because now you have very, very modest adjustments. And the main reason why you're able to do that is because you are addressing your system reinvestment. A lot of times when we go to agencies, they're behind or they deferred capital, that comes to fruition and it causes rate spikes in future years. In this case, you guys are doing a tremendous job of addressing your capital, funding what's necessary, and it's all cash funded. So I applaud the city as well as city staff. And then this shows the Zone 7 rates, and this is for calendar year 2022. And then this is subject to those pass-throughs. So if the Zone 7 declares there's another adjustment and increases their fixed charges, or your allocation of Zone 7 cost changes, then you're able to just pass that through to your customers without going through this Prop 218 noticing anymore. You did that last time as well, so you're following the same practice. And then dedicated fire lines there's some commercial customers where they have a dedicated fire line, and this is essentially just recalibrating that charge for the standby. So they also pay a very small component of fire flow demand. And then this is the schedule of the fire lines for the 5 years, which is very, very modest adjustments, just a few cents each year. And then moving towards the variable rates, this is the city's variable components. So we have your delivery component that is the same across the board. Peaking varies by customer class and by tier. And then recycle customers are identify the expenses specifically associated just with them. And they are the ones that get that cost, which turns out to be 95 cents per 100 cubic feet. The bold and towards the right is the variable rates by tier and customer class. And then it compared to the existing rates. And then you'll notice again, it's a few cents, 10 cents, 20 cents, up to 25 cents. And then keep in mind, this is just the city components. And then Zone 7 is on top of that to every single customer class and tier, 206 per 100 cubic feet. And that's also subject to pass-throughs if and when Zone 7 adjusts their rates. Continue. Oh, I'm sorry. Go one back. I think I missed one. And then these are the 5-year rates. This brings the 23 rates that I showed you by the components. And then 24 through 27 reflects 1% increases in those rates to close out all your 5-year rate schedule that was in the Prop 218 notice. And with that, I can turn over to staff or the city council if there's any question you may have before you open to public testimony.
All right, thank you, Habib. Just one quick clarification. At the end, we discussed a 1% revenue increase. That will be a slightly different percentage in all the different rate components. So it's more like a 2% rate increase because of the way the bills are structured. So about half of our customer bills are direct charges from Zone 7 and about half are from the city. I just wanted to clarify that. And that concludes staff's presentation.
Okay, I think at this point, open the public hearing, unless there's any questions at this point. Okay, so I'll open the public hearing, and could the city clerk please call the first speaker to the podium if we have any?
Mayor, there are no requests to speak in person or by Zoom.
Okay. So at this point, let's see what else I got to. So say here. So seeing that no one wishes to speak, I'm going to close the public hearing. And before I do that, would like to provide anyone who would like to submit or withdraw a written protest the opportunity to do so. Postcards are available at the back of the room for completion and submittal to the city clerk. Once the public hearing is closed, the city council may no longer accept any written protests on the proposed water rates. Are there any remaining written protests to be delivered to the city clerk? Okay, the public hearing is now closed. And at this time, I'd like to ask the city clerk if a majority protest exists, or if we need to take a 5-minute break to tabulate the results for all written protests submitted prior to the close of the public hearing.
Mayor, we don't need to break. I can provide you the results. Prior to the close of the hearing and after having done a facial review, we received a total of 4 written protest letters. A majority of the owners of the identified parcels or tenants directly liable for such charges would equal 4,741. A majority protest does not exist to the proposed water rates.
Okay, thank you. The city clerk has advised us that based on the number of written protests submitted prior to the close of the public hearing, a majority protest does not exist. Therefore, this is now an additional opportunity for the city council to have discussion regarding the proposed water rates. The city council may now proceed to consider the proposed resolution to adopt the proposed water rates. As a reminder, the time for public comment has ended, and the city council will not engage directly with any individual, customer, or member of the public. Do any members of the city council wish to speak or call on staff or the consultant for any clarification with respect to the proposed water rates? Councilmember Carling.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Smith, would you repeat that, the explanation for the increase not really being 1%, but 2%?
Sure. So in the financial model, we look at the percentage of revenue that needs to be increased. But since we only control half of the revenue essentially for the city charges, a 1% overall revenue increase represents about a 2% rate increase. So there's minor variations through the different charges, but generally speaking, the rates each year would go up by approximately 2%.
Just want to turn on the tap.
Sure.
And get the water out. So as a consumer and a ratepayer, I would pay roughly 2% more.
So the city portion of the rates would go up by about 2%.
Yeah, but I get one
Overall-
bill, right?
Correct. The overall bill in the future years, so years 2 through 5, would be approximately 1%. And that's not including whatever Zone 7 may do in the future. But based on the rates that are proposed tonight, the overall bill for most customers would be approximately 1% each year higher.
Well, then where does the 2% come for?
When you look at the city rate components, so you look at the city's
Yeah,
variable
but if I'm
charge.
a consumer and a ratepayer, what is my bill going to say starting in 2023? Is that 2% or 1%?
So honorable council member, there are 2 components. The component the city controls will have the
Right.
consumer see their bill go up 1%. When Zone 7 does their increases, their bill will go up further. So an additional percentage, which is unknown at this time and which will be a direct pass-through. The actions you're taking tonight will result in the overall bill going up 1% to the consumer, and our revenue as the city, which is about half of those total dollars that the customer pays, will go up by therefore 2%.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, and this is not including cow water, right?
It does not include Cal Water at all, and this also does not include Zone 7 pass-through charges, which the Zone 7 rates will be set when those rates go up, which we assume they will over time.
Right.
Those increases will be in addition to what you approve this evening.
And I mean, one of the things that was mentioned was ongoing capital replacement needs are a primary driver. Do we have a sense as to what those expenses look like out into the future?
Yes, we do, Anthony.
So for the first few years of this rate study, our capital improvement program will guide that. And then our future years will be guided by our asset management program. So the asset management program looks out long-term, of course, and tries to kind of annualize the costs. So those capital improvement costs will either be put into reserves for future spending or spent in the following years.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Mayor Bonanno.
Yeah, thank you. I think Mr. Roberts may have partially answered this question, but let me try. So if we continue to have, I realize these are rates increases that start in 2024 or 2023, not this year. If we are subjected to further water restrictions, less water is used, but in some cases costs don't go down. So this is the conundrum, right? Where water service, people use less water, but some of the costs have to stay the same, and water costs actually go up even though people are using less. Is that part of the pass through you were talking about with Zone 7?
So that's actually a separate item, and I'm going to have Mr. Smith talk a little bit about about that. What you're approving tonight is your baseline rates that essentially will exist in times when we do not have mandatory restrictions on water use. And you have also adopted rates that go into effect when we do have that mandatory restrictions because of the very issue that you identified. Mr. Smith, you want to?
Sure. Yeah, so the resolution presented tonight, in addition to, like Mr. Roberts said, the base rates for kind of normal consumption patterns includes 6 stages of water shortage, and those align with the city's water shortage contingency plan. So in those cases, in a declared drought like we're in now, the rates would be controlled by those conservation rates. So the base fixed charge will stay exactly the same for everyone. The variable per unit of water charges, those would increase in that situation. And the goal of those conservation rates is really primarily to make sure that the utility is financially whole.
Thank you. That was the explanation. These are the base rates, not the conservation rates. And right now we're in a stage 1 or stage 2.
Rate wise, we're currently at stage 1.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Can I get well, that concludes the discussion. And can I get a motion, please? Councilmember Monroe.
I move that we accept the staff recommendation for the rate increase over the next few years.
Okay. Vice Mayor Bonanno.
A second.
Okay. Any further discussion? If not, can we have a roll call, please? Oh, Councilmember Monroe.
First, I wanted to appreciate the clear presentation and appreciate the fact that water is one of the most essential things that we have. Without water, we're in real trouble. And so enabling this to take, we know this is the case. It's worth saying one more time. So I'm saying it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Could we have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Carling.
Aye.
Councilmember Kick.
Aye.
Councilmember Monroe.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Bonanno.
Aye.
Mayor Werner.
Aye. The motion passes unanimously. We're on to item 5.2 now, which is a hearing to introduce an ordinance adding section 2.36.200 to the Livermore Municipal Code in compliance with the requirements of Assembly Bill 481, an act to add sections 770 through 775 to the government code relating to military equipment. Can we have the staff presentation, please?
Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council, you can see that Chief Young and Captain Boberg have joined us at the staff table, and Captain Boberg is going to lead us through the staff presentation on this item this evening. Captain Boberg.
That's 5.
Honorable mayors, council, police captain, I'm here to the new law AB 41, which requires all California law enforcement agencies to present an equipment policy for council consideration at a public hearing. The law requires council oversight related to the funding, acquisition, and use of certain types of equipment deemed military equipment by the legislation. In this discussion, the term military equipment may raise some concern when applied to tools used by law enforcement. However, many of these identified items in the legislation have been in law enforcement use for years and are meant to keep both the officers and the public safe by minimizing risk to all parties. This equipment is not synonymous with items commonly used by the military, nor with items provided to law enforcement through military surplus programs. AB 41 defines military equipment by creating 14 different categories. In each of those categories, there are many equipment items included. The Livermore Police Department only possesses and utilizes equipment from about half of those categories. The police department has access to some additional equipment through allied agencies. Those known items have been included in the inventory attached to the staff report as attachment number 2. Upcoming slides will provide additional detail on the specific equipment used by the Livermore Police Department. So the next few slides are going to be kind of a show and tell of the equipment that we actually do use here in Livermore and the stuff that we possess just over at our PD. So the first one is our armored rescue vehicle. This is an armored vehicle per the legislation. It's a GMC 4500 utility truck with armor paneling and thick ballistic protected windows. The next view is the inside of that vehicle, of the armored vehicle. It just has some bench seating, storage underneath the bench seating, some retractable windows, so you can either stay protected or you can open them up if you need to see out. There's some gear storage areas in there. There are no weapons or anything mounted to that vehicle. This is another item within the legislation, which is military equipment. It is what they deem to be a command and control vehicle. We phrase it as our community outreach vehicle. We use it for community engagement events, mobile dispatch center, mobile command post. Our crisis negotiations team often utilizes it as a workspace. And this is the inside of that vehicle. Once again, just workspace, communication centers, whiteboards, the typical things that you would think about in a command post. One of the other items listed in the AB 41 list is unmanned ground vehicles and also aerial vehicles. We don't have any aerial vehicles such as drones, but we do have ground vehicles. So this is a depiction of one. It's called a Throwbot. It's a small remote controlled vehicle with a camera attached to it that allows operators to go into and surveil a space and check a space for maybe an armed person without actually sending personnel into harm's way. Another item is any assault weapon. So assault weapons are codified in the penal code in California. So anything that matches that description, including the entire Colt AR series of weapons. So all of our patrol rifles, SWAT rifles are all assault weapons. So we do possess and utilize those. They're standard equipment nowadays for most police agencies. All of ours are semi-automatic. They're not fully automatic weapons. Kinetic energy weapons is kind of a broad category listed in the AB 41. We utilize 3 different types of kinetic energy weapons. This one is the FN 303, which is somewhat similar to a paintball gun. So it uses compressed air to launch out a frangible plastic projectile with it's called a non-toxic bismuth powder inside that breaks on impact. The next one is a beanbag shotgun system. This is another kinetic energy projectile system utilizing a Remington 870 12-gauge shotgun that shoots out a beanbag device. So you can see there. And our last kinetic energy launching system is a dense foam tipped 40 millimeter launching system that shoots a dense foam tipped projectile. A couple other items that are mentioned in the bill are noise flash diversionary devices. That's the dark canister on the left side of the screen there. It emits a loud sound and a bright flash of light, which is meant to be a distraction and a diversion so that personnel can have some element of surprise or move from one place to another with some degree of safety. The CS smoke is a chemical irritant. It would be utilized if somebody were to be barricaded inside of an environment and refuse to surrender, and there was some need to take law enforcement action. That CS smoke would be used to make that space uncomfortable, try to get them to come out of that space into an area where the police could have a little bit more advantage than going into that space to deal with the person. Another item listed in AB 41 is battering rams or breaching apparatuses. They specifically called out that are explosive in nature. We do not have anything that's explosive in nature. However, we do have a kinetic breaching tool. It utilizes a blank cartridge to fire a primer, which extends out an iron striking plate out the front of it to hit like a door jamb, but that retracts right back into the device. So it doesn't actually shoot out anything. So it just goes out, then comes right back into the device, and it's a handheld device. So policy-wise, we have our overarching use of force policy that applies to all force options. We also have individual policies that apply to specific pieces of equipment that define how and when those items might be used. Our use of force policy specifically calls out that we recognize and respect the value of all human life. Our policy mandates that officers use only that amount of force that it reasonably appears necessary to accomplish a legitimate law enforcement purpose. It also requires, when feasible, that officers utilize de-escalation techniques, crisis intervention techniques, and alternatives to force. Our staff is continuously trained on the use of all equipment that they are authorized to use. Many of the identified equipment items in this legislation will continue to only be used by personnel with specialized training, such as the SWAT team. Going forward, the law requires that an annual report be submitted and considered by council, that the police department host a community engagement meeting after publishing the annual report. Requires the police department to post the policy, inventory, and a Q&A portal on our website, which we have done as of March 3rd of this year. It requires that the funding and acquisition of designated items be approved by council. This will be done through the normal budget process, except for non-budgeted items, which will need to be presented individually to council for consideration. The current budgeted acquisitions will consist of restocking and additions to equipment types already in supply, with no new types of equipment being added. This concludes the presentation, and staff is available to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. At this point, I'll open the public comment. Do we have anybody who wishes to address us on this item?
Honorable Mayor, we have one person via Zoom.
Okay.
Jackie Coda, please unmute yourself.
Thank you. Sorry, I had to leave. So I just wanted to say, in the era of the California Uniparty doing whatever they can to tie the hands of our law enforcement professionals, I would like to say that we as a community 100% appreciate the professional job that our City of Livermore Police Department does, how they are engaging with the community, how they are inviting, how transparent they are, and how professional they conduct themselves. And I would encourage the City Council to support our law enforcement officers in our city with every ounce of budget and attention they possibly can. Thank you.
That concludes public comment.
Okay, I'll close the public comment and bring it back to the council. Councilmember Kick.
Yeah, I just had a couple follow-up questions and wanted to make sure those were on the record. The majority of our budget that goes towards public safety is for personnel. Is that correct? Right.
Yes.
So in no way is the majority of our budget going to what's deemed military equipment.
The majority is personnel related.
Fantastic. And I just also wanted to clarify, when we had this conversation, you let me know that not only do we have our overarching use of force policy and de-escalation techniques, but in the heat of the moment, our personnel are provided with on-site, on equipment instructions on how far to stand away. Can you
Ye-
explain that a little bit?
Yes, they're provided with training on standoff distances. So it might be a less lethal or non-deadly force option to use, like a beanbag shotgun. The closer you are, obviously, the more damage you could do to a person. So that standoff distance for a beanbag shotgun is 20 feet. You should be 20 feet away before you use that device. If the person gets closer or you get closer, our staff is trained to transition to a different device.
And that information is with them at all times.
Yes, in fact, it's actually, we actually tie it to all the devices, all the equipment. So if you check out a FN 303 Kinetic Energy Projectiles System, it has a card with all that information attached to the stock.
Fantastic. Thanks for clarifying that for me.
Councilmember Monroe.
So I had a couple of follow-up. First of all, this was a very clear presentation. Again, thank you. I had a couple of follow-up questions that you in my pre-briefing you mentioned, and I thought might be worth bringing up. One was, I was wondering about what happened. In what ways do these kinds of equipment actually help make the situation safer? And you've given a couple of examples. I wonder if you could share those. So that's one question. And the second is, Chief, I know that you have an citizens advisory body. I'm wondering if they had a chance to comment on this, and if so, what their comments were. Thanks.
Yeah, I'll start off by just providing just a couple quick examples. I think the armored rescue vehicle is one of the prime examples. If somebody's, say, in a house with a weapon, a firearm, and we don't have their cell phone number, they don't have a landline home number, it's very difficult for us to safely even approach the house to begin communications, to begin a crisis communication with them, to see if we can talk them out and de-escalate the situation. The armored vehicle gives us that protection to drive right basically into their front yard, get onto a PA system, say, hey, we're out here, we want to communicate, here's how we could do that, and give some options. Without that, leaving officers to walk down the street or drive up in a patrol car is just so dangerous. So that armored vehicle is a prime example of how we can use it to actually de-escalate a situation.
As far as the other question, we do have the Chiefs Advisory Group, and we've met several times. We haven't discussed this topic yet, but the information is posted on our website, and we will have conversations with the community group with that.
Thank you both.
Any other comments? Okay, I want to thank you for the a good report, and I think it clarifies what kind of equipment we have, and it all seems appropriate. So thank you. Can we get a motion for approval?
Yeah, I raised my hand, so
Oh, I'm sorry.
that's okay. I'll move staff recommendation.
A second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Do we have a roll call, please?
Aye.
Councilmember Kick,
Aye.
Councilmember Monroe,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Bonanno,
Aye.
Mayor Werner.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. At this point, which, our practice, take a break, 10 minutes at 9 o'clock. So we'll come back at 9:10, thereabouts. Okay, it's 9:10. Are we good to go here? Oh, not yet. Oh, Okay, it's 9:10. I think we're all here, ready to resume this city council meeting. We're on to item 5.3, hearing to consider a proposal to amend the downtown specific plan regarding outdoor dining guidelines, and amend the Livermore Municipal Code, adding chapter 5.6, outdoor dining permit, to establish an outdoor dining ordinance, including a permitting process. We have the staff presentation, please.
Honorable Mayor, I'd like to introduce our planning manager, Steve Stewart, who's going to lead off our presentation. Mr. Stewart?
Good evening, Mayor Warner, members of the council. I'm going to turn it over to Cam Purewall, one of our associate planners and part of the team that put this together for you, while at the same time deploying and assisting our downtown businesses out there, get all the pieces and parts together to get that in place over the last couple of weeks. So, Mr. Purewall.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and council members. The items for your review tonight are the Civic Plan Amendment and Municipal Code Amendment for outdoor dining. In 2004, the City Council adopted the Downtown Civic Plan. The Civic Plan guides the community vision for downtown growth, development, and economic revitalization. Through the COVID-19 pandemic, the city allowed businesses to temporarily expand dining and double the number of parking spaces available for outdoor dining from 28 to 56 spaces. The downtown businesses and community members continue to express support and see the need for balancing outdoor dining with convenient public parking. The proposed amendments are the result of collaboration between downtown businesses, Livermore Downtown Inc., and key staff across the city organization. The items before you this evening follow termination of the local emergency order and establish the policy framework and implementing ordinance to ensure outdoor dining continues to contribute to a vibrant downtown. Staff will be returning to council with noise regulations within the few months. The specific plan currently allows 25% of parking spaces on First Street from M Street to Maple for outdoor dining. The proposal will expand outdoor dining by adding J, K, and McLeod Streets between First and Second Street. The percentage of available parking spaces will remain at 25%. This increases the total number of parking spaces to 42. This is midway between the pre-pandemic count of 28 spaces and the maximum usage during the pandemic of 56. The project will establish two districts located east and west of Livermore Avenue. Each district will allow up to 25% of available parking spaces for outdoor dining. And the graphic there, you can see in the green, District 1 east to the west of Livermore Avenue, and District 2 in the orange to the east. Before the City Council tonight are amendments to Chapter 5, 6, and 10 of the specific plan. Chapter 5 increases the number of spaces available for outdoor dining by adding J, K, and McLeod Streets. Outdoor dining would also be permitted in the public right-of-way, including sidewalks, designated plaza areas, and other landscaped areas. Chapter 6 provides design standards for fixtures and furniture and outlines the allocation process for outdoor dining. Additionally, outdoor dining within street parking areas must be directly in front of the restaurant. The proposed amendment would allow the community development director to allocate one additional space on one side of the business's extended property line. And this is subject to written consent from the neighboring property owner to the extent practicable and the neighboring tenant. The minimum width of sidewalk corridors between outdoor dining fencing and fixtures will be decreased from 6 feet down to 5 feet and will continue to comply with the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA. Chapter 10 provides guidelines for implementing the outdoor dining permit. This chapter would be revised to reference the application procedures and eliminate the need for an encroachment permit. It also requires the applicant to enter into an outdoor dining maintenance and removal agreement with the city. The duration of the annual permit will last from March to October. The ordinance will implement the civic plan and establish rules and regulations. The municipal code amendment will add chapter 5.6, outdoor dining permit, to the Livermore Municipal Code. The premise of the ordinance is to codify an outdoor dining permit and authorize the city to implement the outdoor dining policy through administrative guidelines. The ordinance will simplify the application process and facilitate enforcement through administrative due process. The permit fees for outdoor dining were waived during the pandemic. Fees for outdoor dining in 2022 will also be waived. Going forward, staff is proposing to simplify the fee structure and start collecting application fees in 2023. The proposed fees include an annual maintenance and damage deposit of $400, and use of the right-of-way would be assessed at a rate of $1 per square foot. Basically, what this breaks down to is one parking space in the downtown core measures approximately 187 square feet, and that would be assessed at approximately $1,500 for the 8-month outdoor dining season. And for 2 parking spaces, it would be double to $3,000. The proposed permit fees will offset approximately half the staff time and costs associated with processing applications, maintenance of the outdoor dining area, and increase in parking enforcement. In conclusion, the Planning Commission and staff recommend the City Council take the actions listed on the slide and approve the amendment to the Downtown Civic Plan and introduce the ordinance for the municipal code. Thank you. Staff is available for any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you. At this point, I'll open the public comment. Do we have anybody who wishes to address us on this?
Honorable Mayor, we have 2 speakers via Zoom. The first one is Ruby V. The second one is Jackie Coda. Ruby V, please unmute yourself.
Hello, and good evening, council members and community. For those of you who I haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet, my name is Ruby Lopez Villarreal. I'm the new executive director at Livermore Downtown Inc. Livermore Downtown Inc. board and myself would like to express our appreciation to the city of Livermore for their ongoing support. Throughout the process, the city hosted several meetings in which all of the various industries within our downtown merchant base were invited. All of the businesses in the downtown area had multiple opportunities to voice their concerns and their support for the outdoor dining policy. Livermore Downtown Inc. and the LDI board agree that the outdoor dining plan is within the best interest of all of the merchants and that it will keep parking balance for all the downtown merchants while still meeting the outdoor dining needs. Thank you to all of you for your time. I'm looking forward to meeting you all downtown very soon. Have a good evening.
The last speaker is Jackie Coda. Jackie Coda, please unmute yourself.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to talk a couple of questions, but first of all, I think that this is a much better resolution with regard to outdoor dining than continuing on a fraudulent emergency ordinance or emergency order. So I really want to commend the city for working with the businesses downtown to maintain and continue the outdoor dining, since so many businesses lost so much money during the unnecessary shutdowns. I've had a question about the permit amount. You were talking about the parking spaces. I'd like to know, are those permits and those fees, is that a monthly fee or is that an annual fee? I apologize, I didn't get that. It wasn't clear to me in the presentation. So that's my question. And once again, I want to applaud the city and the downtown for working with the city to maintain and continue outdoor dining. All the more reason to reconsider Eden Housing because of the fact that it will impose overflow parking into the downtown parking structures that are being built. And if we lose our parking downtown for outdoor dining, there's going to be more of a need of parking in our parking structure, and we don't need resident overflow. So thank you very much. And I would appreciate just a quick answer to the question about those fees. Thank you.
And that concludes public comment.
Okay, would staff care to answer the question on the fee?
Sure thing. So the fee is an annual fee for 8 months for the outdoor dining season. And the $1,500 are for one parking space, and it would be doubled to $3,000 for 2 parking spaces, but it is an annual fee for the 8-month season.
Okay, thank you. I'll bring it back to the close public comment at this point and bring it back for council deliberation. I just want to say at the outset, I really appreciate this being done. And we moved pretty quick to let people expand into the outdoor spaces before. And we were kind of, the aesthetics of the whole thing didn't matter that much. It was more the survival really for the businesses. And I think now, in addition to, tightening this up, but one of the things that I think is also happening here is it'll look a lot better. So I just want to point that out. And we have rules as to what can be done and can't be done. So thank you. Anybody else on the, I just got to, right. Okay. Vice Mayor Bonanno.
Yeah, thank you. I think Ruby, our LDI Executive Director, and Mayor Warner covered a couple of things I just wanted to say, but I think I also wanted to thank staff for everything they did on this. I know it was a lot of work to do all the communication, all the outreach, develop this plan where there's a lot of, pushing and pulling on some businesses like having the spots used for dining. Some prefer to have their spots open in front of their stores so that people can come in and buy things in the retail establishments. I think the compromise was great. I think the feedback I've gotten both from our service businesses, our retailers, as well as our restaurants, they all feel like this was done extremely well, extremely fairly. It was done with a lot of input from and help also from LDI to sort of be the conduit between the city and a lot of our businesses downtown. I think everything I heard was that people felt like this was done really well, and that the answer here is a little bit of everything. And people are feeling that they were all treated fairly and the process was done well. So I just, as the liaison from LDI, I get a lot of the input from our businesses. And in this case, especially, I think people felt really good about the way it was done. And I know it's a lot of effort. I know it's a lot of effort to do the work to take those spaces and turn them into dining areas that are safe and well lit. And I think that we know people like to eat outdoors now. We know they probably always did, is the truth, and just reinforced it. Everybody being forced to eat out more than indoors. So thank you all for doing that. LDI as well deserves a lot of credit for this, and our businesses who all really need to be looking out for themselves, of course, at some level, but they were all interested in making sure that the whole area thrived through this pandemic and as we're coming out of it. So thanks again.
Councilmember Monroe.
So I'm wondering if you could put up the slide about the cost again. So I really appreciate that. Those of you who've heard me speak on parking before know that my feelings about parking, the idea that parking spaces are something that are taken for granted is something that needs to be questioned. What I find interesting about this is that this gives an opportunity to look at how we're thinking about that cost. So I think this is great. I think that we have a one-time damage deposit. We have a flex zone space in 2 different areas, and we have a cost for how much that is. Now, what I want to ask, and I'm just putting it out there because this is not too germane to this point, but it is about what parking costs, is take a look at $1,500 per season. That's what a parking space, that's money that is being generated for the city. That's effectively what we're saying a parking space costs. That means that when anybody parks in a parking space anywhere, we are paying for that. That's a benefit to our residents. I just want to make sure everybody's aware that they're getting a benefit because they're being allowed to park. That's a benefit they get. We could be charging for parking, Maybe we should be. Just saying.
Councilmember Kick.
Yeah, I just had a follow-up from the draft minutes from the Planning Commission. There was a question from Chairperson Dunbar about a safety issue with some of the rebar on J and K, and I don't see an answer to that in the notes. Have we decided those planters on J and K had some rebar sticking out? Are we going to be able to fix those and address them in this process?
Sure. I believe the testimony from Chair Dunbar was around some of the planters and pots that needed fixing,
Yeah.
and also some of our trees and furniture down there. So we are intending to upgrade those, make sure they're not posing a risk. And so that'll also be partially covered by the fees that we're getting over time, so that those, hopefully we can avoid those from being out there in the first place.
Fantastic. And then I just wanted to know, is there a planned reassessment of fees on an annual basis, 5-year basis, or would we have to do a matters initiated to look at that again?
Those would typically be looked at whenever we would do a comprehensive fee update. And Mr. Roberts, the increment for that is at a 5-year update.
Generally, we do look at all of our fees and charges, at least on a 5-year rolling timeframe. In addition, they would have an annual CPI in between that. So the council has set the recovery rate at a variety of different rates, depending on what each individual fee and who's impacted by this. As you heard in the staff presentation and read in the staff report, this fee recovery rate is about 50% of the costs that are put into that area, and the other 50% are paid by all of the residents here through the general fund. So the council has the opportunity to both take a look at that fee and then also to take a look at that recovery ratio to see if that's the appropriate one moving forward. And the item tonight would be our initial one. And the next time you'd look at this, or the council would look at this, would be normally at about a 5-year interval, although in between it would be a CPI adjustment.
Okay, great. Thank you for clarifying that. I think this is going to be great, and I can't wait to utilize it.
Councilmember Carling.
Yes, thanks. Cam, you mentioned noise, and I know that the expectation is at some point you'll come back and we'll have a discussion about noise downtown. I think it's particularly with respect to the bans that some of the restaurants employ, particularly on the weekends. So can you just tell us when we might expect to hear something about that?
Sure, we're developing some of the methodology we intend to use, and are coordinating with Livermore Downtown Inc. and a few business owners there who have volunteered to let us measure the sound coming from their amplifiers, from their speakers, different times of the day. And we are actually have some data already we'll be presenting or trying to analyze. I was out actually measuring a band and dropped our old device. So we do have a few new ones coming.
Oops.
And the great news is they've gone way down in price. So that's well within our budget. We'll have up-to-date decibel
This is the damage deposit that you.
And so we'll have some good real-time information for you. And again, working in cooperation with some of our businesses downtown.
Perfect. Do you have an estimate? I mean, some people have, I think, communicated with us, at least to me, about noise. And do we have a sense of when you might come back to the council with that information?
Sure, we would hope to return in a couple of months.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay, got a couple of questions. Right now, we're in transition from the way we did it quick. When do you think it'll look good? When will we get the umbrellas looking good, the different dividers, to the black
Sure.
wrought iron? When's the whole thing going to say, okay, it'll pass some inspection.
We've already been working with our neighborhood preservation staff to reach out to some of those businesses with furniture, umbrellas, for example, that are non-compliant. So we'll continue that effort, and I would, we'll shoot to have that looking good as quickly as we can. So we're actively doing it now, and we'll continue that on a weekly basis, daily basis, until we are able to get compliance in some of those high visibility areas.
So is that like weeks, months? What?
You could expect to see some changes in weeks, since we've already been working with them to establish what some of the expectations are on the look and feel. So also been working with them on fencing material. Sometimes there's a back order on equipment. So our neighborhood preservation is working with them and asking, hey, have you ordered this equipment yet? What's the status, so that we have an understanding of a time frame on a kind of a per business basis.
And the final area is the Flagpole Plaza area that has a number of improvements. We continue to work on the design of that area, and that area will not come into full compliance with the ultimate vision until next season, because that will essentially be changing some of the paving in that area, changing the lighting in that area. But things like umbrellas and tables, that'll be this season and over a series of weeks.
So you just mentioned the lighting, and we talked over the years past about J and K. Is that what you just referenced? That
it is that, but in the case of Flagpole Plaza and in some of the areas, there were some individually purchased lights that are strung in a variety of capacities, some that look just fine and some not so much. And so we'll be working with each of the businesses there to make sure that they ultimately do conform to a standard, that it does look appropriate for a downtown area. And obviously we're balancing sort of variety and liveliness with sort of the look that has a clean and professional look to it, so that it does look like the downtown is not simply a secondhand store for some of the stuff down there.
And will the city contribute on the J and K for the overhead? Is that, or is it the merchants that are responsible? How is that going to get funded?
So go ahead and talk about the lighting program.
So for the J and K lighting, which we've contemplated as lighting that hangs over the streets, that would have to be a city initiative. And we have looked at that in the past. We would have to pursue a public works project to install standards to hang the lights from, because the buildings are at different heights and there's some challenges going building to building. So we have that on our list, and it won't be a this year project, but we can pursue that through the CIP.
Okay, thank you. And then one of we talked about how frequently the fees might get reviewed, but since we're changing this policy and we're putting it in place, I would suggest at the end of this season that we kind of get a report back of how it went. We can ask the merchants as well as the residents, what they think.
So as far as the fees, this season wouldn't be a great one.
No, not the fees.
Very good.
I'm saying with the fees, you can do that. I was meaning the rest of it.
Absolutely.
And in particular, because we are expanding it, we're putting some rules in place, and let's just get some feedback as to how it went. I mean, I think we're all anticipating it'll be good, but let's just hear.
Very good.
Okay, with that, I think got to get it's time for a motion. Do I have a Vice Mayor Bonanno
I move approval.
and Councilmember Monroe?
I second.
Okay, moved and seconded. I don't see any other discussion. Can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Carling,
Aye.
Councilmember Kick,
Aye.
Councilmember Monroe,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Bonanno,
Aye.
Mayor Warner.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously, and that was for all parts of the item. Okay, we're now on to item 6.1, a resolution approving the 2022 revised meeting rules of procedure for the City of Livermore advisory bodies. Can we have the staff presentation, please?
Yes, Honorable Mayor, Deputy City Clerk Debbie Elam is going to give the presentation on this item this evening. Ms. Elam?
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council members. My name is Debbie Elam, your Deputy City Clerk. Item 6.1 on the agenda is a resolution approving the 2022 revised meeting rules of procedure for the City of Livermore advisory bodies. As directed by City Council, the City Clerk has revised the meeting rules of procedure for the city's bodies to conform to the City Council meeting rules of procedure. Tonight, I wanted to highlight a few of the updates. Consistent with council direction pre-pandemic, all bodies will return to meeting in person. Advisory bodies will now meet in the new William Mendenhall room right across the way, with the exception of Planning Commission, who will meet here in the chambers. The Youth Advisory Commission will meet at the Robert Livermore Community Center, and the Livermore Housing Authority will continue to meet at the Housing Authority office. Similar to City Council changing to action minutes with the direction of that a recording of the meeting be made available on the city website, advisory bodies are also changing to action minutes, with the exception of the Planning Commission, whose minutes are used as background information for City Council agenda items. The advisory body meetings will have an audio recording that will be chaptered and captioned, and those recordings will be available on the city website. And the final item I wanted to highlight tonight is we have 2 limited duration committees are being extended to continue their work. The Climate Action Plan Advisory Committee is extending the committee through December 2022, and the Citizens Asset Management Program Outreach Committee is extending to December 2023. And this concludes my presentation, and staff is available for questions.
Okay, thank you. I'll at this point open the public comment on 6.1. Do we have anybody who wishes to address us?
No, Mayor, no requests have been received.
Okay, close the public comment on 6.1. I'll bring it back to the council. Councilmember Carling.
Yes, thank you. One of the things in your report speaks to self-initiated projects, and that any self-initiated project requiring more than 8 hours of staff time needs to come to City Council. Who decides whether it's 8 hours or not? Is that clear to the advisory body that might have a self-generated project?
During the issue of self-generation of the matter initiated, the expectation is that the liaison, who is their staff, would immediately note, oh, that's bigger than a bread box. So essentially, they would then be given the ability to adjust what they're asking for to fall below that standard, or to essentially ask to have that item forwarded to the council. And that's the expected interaction. What happens most of the time is the request gets adjusted so that we can complete it. Occasionally, it gets combined or put off, but we haven't had one recently brought up to the City Council.
Okay, thank you. It just wasn't clear in the staff report that the liaison was the one that made that determination. Thank you.
Councilmember Kick.
I know some people have been concerned about moving to action minutes, and I just wanted to call out the fact that they will be captioned and recorded, and everybody will be able to listen to these meetings. And Planning Commission is not getting special treatment. It's just that, as you noticed, I did reference Planning Commission action minutes in making decisions here today. So I just wanted to call that out, that you will be able to hear everything that happened. It is recorded. It just saves a significant amount of staff time. So thank you for that. And if there are no other comments, I will move approval.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any further discussion? If not, can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Carling?
Aye.
Councilmember Kick?
Aye.
Councilmember Monroe?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Bonanno?
Aye.
Mayor Warner?
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. We're now on to item 7.0, council committee reports and matters initiated by the city manager, city attorney, staff, and council members. We'll start with Councilmember Kick.
On Monday, March 4th, I was at a TVTC SEP committee meeting. And hopefully that'll be coming back to us next month to adopt the new funds, and a LAFTA meeting on the 4th as well. And sad to report that Michael Tree is leaving and moving on. But that means we're going to be looking for a new director of Wheels. And so that will be an exciting process, but we will miss Michael. And then on Saturday the 2nd, I was able to go give the mayor's proclamation or certificate of achievement to Mike Beckwith, a community member that did live in Dublin, ran every street on his feet in Dublin, then moved to Livermore and ran every street on his feet of Livermore and completed the map on that Saturday. And there was maybe 20 community members that ran the last mile with him. And it was a nice celebration that happened at Bar Quixote downtown, where people, celebrated just a really fun, positive community thing. So thanks for the opportunity for that. And that's all I have today.
Councilmember Carling.
Yes, thank you. Just one minor change on my council report. I actually attended the Pleasanton Mayor's State of the City address in person, and there were probably a couple of hundred people there. Brandon Cardwell was also there. I'm not sure who else from city staff was there, but I did attend in person. The other thing I wanted to mention was today, I attended one of the continuous professional trainings that our police department undergoes on a regular basis. And today was on use of force. And I have to say how proud I am of living in this city with such a fine department here serving all of us and protecting us. And I was particularly impressed by the two leaders of that training today. I think both of whom are here this evening. And I think I've appreciated many of the questions they had of the officers. As a topic was discussed, they would probe a little deeper to get a little more conversation going. And I thought it was very professionally done. And I have to commend the chief, Captain Boberg, and the rest of the team that participated in this. And again, I think we as a community should be very thankful and proud to work with such fine officers here in this city of Livermore. So thank you.
Councilmember Monroe.
Well, I'm going to let my report stand as submitted. I did want to pick up on what Councilmember Carling said. I was hoping to attend that training as well. Unfortunately, I was on getting off of a plane at the time, so could not. So I'm really looking forward to the very next time you offer it, being part of it at that point. What I mostly wanted to do with this report out, though, was to think about this, the period of time that we're in, and talk a little bit about something that we take for granted, which is calendars. This week, all three of the Abrahamic religions converge in observing holidays. So Muslims are about a week into the month of Ramadan, marking when the Quran began to be revealed to the Prophet Muhammad. According to Muslim tradition, on Friday, Jews began the week of Passover, marking the exodus from slavery to freedom. According to Jewish tradition, Christians will be celebrating Easter, marking the rising of Jesus from the dead, according to Christian tradition. And the stories of each of these holidays are the heart of these religions. So I wish all who celebrate Ramadan Mubarak, Happy Easter, and Chag Sameach Pesach. But that's actually not what I wanted to talk about. It seemed appropriate, though. So to those who celebrate, there you go. But it's the convergence of the holidays made me think about how much we take our calendars for granted. Muslims follow a strictly lunar calendar, and that means that Ramadan rotates through a cycle of seasons, meaning that as you live your life, you celebrate a holiday in summer, in winter, in spring, and in fall, which makes for a very different experience. It also means that the moon is central. Christians follow a solar holiday. Moon is less important, but the seasons stay regular. And you see them at pretty much the same time according to the sun. And then Jews combine the two, it's with a cycle of 19 years, with 7 of those 19 years being leap months. So it's a solar lunar calendar, lunar solar calendar. I can't remember which, but it pays attention to balances both the moon and the sun. And what it means is that when these holidays all come together, it's a chance to think about the calendars that guide our lives in a real world, with the stars above, the moon above, and the earth below. So with all of that, whatever you are, just remember the earth and the in nature that we're in is where we are. And happy spring as well.
Okay, Vice Mayor Bonanno.
Thank you for that, Councilmember Monroe. That was a good perspective. It is unusual that all 3 of these holidays come together at the same time. So I just wanted to mention one thing that I'm now involved with. The mayor has asked me to take over as the delegate, the commissioner for the Alameda County Transportation Commission, which is very exciting for me because it's a really cool commission that does a lot of really important things around the county. They get to have a big vote in allocating a lot of funds. And I think part of my job is to advocate for bringing as many of those dollars here that we can justify. My first meeting was last week, where they had a once a year strategic retreat. So I got a chance to meet all the other, mostly mayors, some vice mayors, and a few council members from all over Alameda County, and spent the day not only getting to know them, but also talking about some of the bigger, broader issues that the ACTC is dealing with, and that we all are, all cities in this county. So just wanted to mention a couple of things that we heard a really interesting talk. It was on the session on state and regional perspectives. The executive director for MTC ABAG, Therese McMillan, spoke, and she gave a really interesting talk about just the bigger picture that MTC sees for transportation funding, transportation issues, all the things we're dealing with that get to housing, traffic, climate change, all of which, you know, transportation plays a role in. So that was very interesting. We had an interesting keynote entitled Equitable Cities. A professor from Rutgers, Charles Brown, gave a very, very interesting talk about equitable cities and all the factors that play into what makes cities equitable for all, and in some cases inequitable. So again, it got to be unhealthy environments due to housing located near traffic. There's a whole variety of things that were really provocative and generated a lot of good discussion. And then the third session we had to do with equity and safety and climate action. So I just wanted to say I'm really pleased that I got this assignment and looking forward to reporting back out as I start attending meetings regularly. I attended one today, it's this committee for projects and programs. And I'll say that one of the items that we approved was additional funding for the Safe Routes to School program. And this is specifically to address some of the safety issues at Lawrence Elementary that we have talked about for some time. So those dollars are coming here, and I will report out on other things that I think are relevant. So that's all I had for today. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you. One thing I'll highlight from my report is on Valley Link. I'm on the board there, as well as a board subcommittee looking at sustainability, focusing on evaluating the extent to which hydrogen might be the right solution for powering Valley Link, and more to come on that. But the other, in addition to considering moving the trains to that power, the question is, to what extent can we generate hydrogen, say from a solar farm in Tracy? So that's what's being evaluated there. More to come on that over time. So with that, we're going to now recess to a closed session. And after the closed session, we will reconvene this regular meeting for a report of action taken in the closed session. So now do we need I'm looking at this, do we need a roll call now for the closed session?
Mr. Mayor, I would invite if anyone has any public comments on the closed session
Well,
items.
yeah, I was going to go there, but I was just wondering, my question was, do we need a roll call for the close? I don't think it's in my notes, so I'm just reading what I got here. But anyway, I'm now going to provide an opportunity for the public to address the council regarding only the closed session meeting items. And we had a couple of people talk about it earlier, so presumably they won't be calling back in. We've already heard from them. And do we, quickly, I think people have learned how to participate in the meeting, but just real quickly, one comment per person. Members of the public can participate by submitting a speaker card or by using the raised hand feature, *9 if calling in. One public comment opens. Once it opens, each participant's name will be announced, and their 3 minutes will begin once at the lectern or being unmuted. Okay, so now the item on our we have closed session, 2 items. It's conference with the legal counsel regarding existing litigation, to meet with the legal counsel pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9, paren D, paren 1, to discuss litigation that has been formally initiated, 2 cases. One is Tolbert versus Livermore et al., United States District Court for the Northern District of California, case number 4:21-CV-05174-YGR. The second item is Save the Hill Group versus Livermore et al., California Court of Appeal, First Appellate District, Division 5, case number A161573. And it's the Alameda County Superior Court, case number RG 190200186. So does anybody wish to address us on either of these 2 items before we go into closed session?
Yes, Mayor, there are 4 requests to speak. The first is from John Marchand, followed by Graham Taliber and Doug Mann. John Marchand.
Hello again, Mayor Werner, Vice Mayor Bonanno, and members of the council. In the closed session tonight, you're going to be considering your options with respect to the recent court ruling on the Garaventa Hills project. First, I believe that it is important to correct the public record. The East Bay Times got the story right. It was the EIR that failed to address potential funding opportunities and not the council. In fact, the ruling made it very clear that the council did ask about the potential funding. However, the council was advised that in their quasi-judicial role, they could only rule if the project had met the rules that had been established and not on the consideration of acquiring the property. The court ruling was that it was the EIR that failed to address this option, not the council. It became clear that no one on the council truly supported the project as originally designed. The council simply followed the rules that it was bound by. Now that this is returned to the city, I'd like to make a couple suggestions. First, I would recommend not appealing the ruling. Second, I would suggest that efforts be made to prevent circumstances like this ever happening again. The city is currently reviewing its general plan. Since I am on both the Local Agency Formation Commission and the General Plan Review Advisory Committee, it seems that this general plan update would provide the ideal opportunity to look at all potentially environmentally sensitive and prime agricultural lands and consider rezoning them before projects are proposed for them. This will take them off the table and provide a greater opportunity to permanently protect those places that make Livermore a remarkable place to live. Thank you.
The next request to speak is Graham Taliber, followed by Doug Mann and Bianca.
Hey everyone, I'm Graham Taliber. I grew up here in Livermore. I've been going to the hills since I was, 4 years old. I totally agree. I want to make Livermore a magnificent, memorable place. I kind of just want to reiterate what I've said before about the hill. Ecologically speaking, the Garaventa Hill property is one of the most valuable unprotected pieces of land in the city of Livermore. The hill and the land that immediately surrounds it is habitat to handfuls of threatened and endangered species, such as the California tiger salamander, burrowing owl, and our beloved Livermore tar plant. The Garaventa Hill is the last essential piece required to protect what is remaining of the Altamont Creek watershed, a watershed which biodiversity depends heavily on the intactness of the hills that surround it. Years ago, before development began surrounding Altamont Creek and its alluvial plain, also known as an alkali sink. This watershed was a pristine example of one of the rarest ecologies in the state of California. It was teeming with plant life and animal species found nowhere else in the world. Don't believe me? Ask anyone studying botany or biology at UC Berkeley about the area. Although it has been fragmented, what remains of this biological wonder is invaluable and absolutely needs to be protected. The well-being of the currently protected Garaventa wetlands and Springtown wetlands just downstream of the Garaventa Hill depends on the Garaventa Hill remaining untouched and intact as open space. If the hill is built upon, it will heavily alter the designated conservation land downstream of it. Also, a fun fact, in addition to all the threatened and endangered species that were mentioned but disregarded by the EIR, 2 extremely rare plant species have been found living at and around the Garaventa Hill, the San Joaquin spear scale and the long-styled sandspurry. These species are listed in California's rare plant inventory as a 1B.2, which is just 1 ranking away from being considered extinct. This means that these understudied species are currently eligible and being considered for protection by the California Environmental Quality Act as endangered species. They're actually flowering right now if anyone wants to go look at them with me. Just another reason to protect this amazing space. Thank you.
Next speaker is Doug Mann, followed by Bianca.
I'm speaking on behalf of Citizens for Balanced Growth, not as an individual. We originally wanted to provide these observations at the outset of the closed session prior to the commencement of your private deliberations, as we believe a closed session is the appropriate venue for what is to follow. We were told there was no way to do that. Our only remaining option is to ensure you hear our statement is to present it now. The court made several facts undeniably clear. Your constituents did everything they knew how to do in order to exhaust every effort to protect the land as open space, including direct inquiries as to whether funding was available to do that. There were 2 people at the April 22nd, 2019 City Council meeting that were well aware of the DVSA fund we oversee. First, there is John Marchand, who cannot claim ignorance, as he was on the board of Zone 7 when he voted to take its illegal action, which ultimately created the fund, and he distributed the money as a council member. Steve Stewart is the de facto administrator. There is no way around it. John Marchand hid the money. Steve Stewart hid the money. But that's not the worst of it. Your city attorney is most responsible for trapping you in this lawsuit. His incorrect legal advice with his team's concurrence inspired the illegal EIR certification. We don't know the details of your defense outsourcing agreement with the developer's attorney. The best strategy would have been to only expend the bare minimum effort in order to legally satisfy the unfortunate need to defend the council's flawed EIR decision. After the bizarre victory in the trial case, an astute city attorney should have known that the technicality used to throw it out would naturally be overturned on appeal. Even a mildly motivated investigation would have supported even more surety that this case would not survive a 3-judge panel based on how often Judge Roche has had his cases reversed. We are disappointed that your counsel did not or could not find a way to avoid contesting the appeal last year based on overwhelming unlikelihood of victory. You employ exactly 2 people, the city manager and the city attorney. We believe the city council and the residents would be best served if the city attorney had more fully developed environmental law skills. It's not a bad quality for a city manager either. It could have easily kept you out of a 3-year lawsuit. In conclusion, if an approach to the remaining legal milestones with the goal of exiting this mess quickly has not yet been employed, shifting to such a strategy is highly appropriate. Thank you.
Next speaker is Bianca.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, staff. I'm Bianca Covarelli, Save the Hill. A little backstory. For the last 11 years, the citizens of this town who love it dearly have challenged the environmentally decimating Garaventa Hills proposed project and the city's EIR. On April 22nd, 2019, the city approved the Garaventa Hill Lafferty Communities Development and certified the RFEIR. On May 21st, 2019, Save the Hill filed and served notice of intent to commence legal action against the city of Livermore for not meeting CEQA guidelines. In April 2020, the trial court ruled Save the Hill won on merits, but hadn't exhausted administrative remedies. On November 23rd, 2020, Save the Hill filed a notice of appeal to challenge that ruling. March 30th of this year, the appellate court ruled in Save the Hill's favor and overturned the trial court's previous ruling and vacated the city's RFEIR as it violated CEQA. We had asked these questions. We had missed no meetings. We had been present and on the record asking these questions of this council. And it violated CEQA by not addressing our concerns. This case set a legal precedent and is now published. That means something. I was grateful to be heard because I don't feel the council or the mayor or city staff was listening. The court found Save the Hill had exhausted administrative remedies by requesting conservation, requesting assistance locating conservation funds, which I had personally asked on the record, to purchase the land, and by asking not to approve the proposed development due to the environmentally sensitive, endangered, and special status species habitat that live in, on, and around that hill. The court found the city had not considered a no project alternative as required by CEQA, and the city's analysis was inadequate. The court stated the city had an obligation to consider conservation in a highly sensitive ecosystem and habitat, as the hill is. The court additionally ruled the city had an obligation to disclose the existence of conservation funds to the public and make those conservation funds a well-known fact to the landowners and for consideration of conservation, as that was an option. The court also found that the site can be rezoned recreational in environmentally sensitive sites. It can be rezoned, not that it needs to be conserved. This is similar to the Farber property back in 2011. The city could not certify an EIR due to the environmentally sensitive site. The city voted for use of the exact pools of conservation funds available for East Bay Regional Park District's acquisition of Farber in 2011 that is now part of the Brushy Peak Trail Complex. Farber property is literally yards away from the Garaventa Hill site. Arguably, the hill is even more environmentally sensitive. The base of the hill is federally, state, and city protected. It's called the Garaventa Wetlands Preserve. The the ecosystem and the upland habitat contains the protected California tiger salamander during warm, dry season.
So
I'm
you
asking
could,
you, after
excuse me, you could
11
just
years of a
conclude.
vacated RFEIR, I urge you to consider a different approach. I ask you to consider in good faith a no project alternative, to vote for use of conservation funds to conserve this land. I'm
Okay.
sorry I did not finish. I have more.
Thank you. Your time is up.
Thank you so much.
The next request to speak is over Zoom.
The next speaker is Connie Huang. Connie Huang, please unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. So I've been a North Livermore resident since 1999. I grew up here in the same neighborhood where the proposed Garaventa project would be. The Save the Hill group has been fighting for over 10 years to keep the hill an open space. Throughout the last 11 years, her residents voiced their environmental concerns in various ways, such as writing letters to the city and speaking their thoughts at city council meetings. And in all the years that I've lived here and been aware of this issue, no resident I know in this area is in approval of the project. I myself actually wrote a letter to former Mayor John Marchand back in 2013 when I was a high school junior. And to this date, my concerns from that letter remain. A lot has transpired since then, namely the fact that the appellate court ruled against the city of Livermore and Lafferty communities because the city did not consider the no project alternative. Because the residents here would bear the most immediate impact, I hope the council members would consider where our concerns are coming from. And so far, as Bianca pointed out earlier, I think most of us feel ignored, as it took 11 years in a lawsuit to stop this project. I recognize that the Bay Area has a need for housing. However, this land is environmentally sensitive, as we pointed out throughout the years. The Hill, together with the Garaventa Wetlands Preserve, provides a habitat for a variety of special status species protected under the California Endangered Species Act and the Endangered Species Act. At the beginning of this meeting, we took a moment to recognize that we are currently on the land of the Ohlone people. I hope we continue to honor them by loving their land and taking care of it. We can really make a positive difference here environmentally. And I hope that the city will find a way to keep this hill an open space and take this as a learning lesson. Thank you.
That concludes public comment.
Okay, thank you. I'll close public comment on our closed session, and we'll now move into the closed session room. And we'll be coming back at the end of that to adjourn this meeting and report out. Okay, we're back from closed session. So I'm reconvening the regular session. And do we have a report out of any action?
Mr. Mayor, this is your city attorney, Jason Alcala. No, the city council did not take any reportable action in closed session. That concludes my report.
Okay, thank you. We're now adjourning to a regular meeting on April 25th, 2022 at 7 p.m. held in person and remotely.